And so thank you for being here. Because this is the long view of the budget. For some of you that have been involved in this before, you know that the budget season for us starts in November. We send out in early November a budget message, actually the end of October, to all of the site managers. And by that I mean principals, directors, coordinators. And I asked them, and the message was clear, the only increases that I wanted to see on the budget are increases that could be tied to improvement of student achievement. Those were the only ones. And people then, right after Thanksgiving, they put their numbers into our accounting system, Vadar. First week of December, principals came and directors into my office, and with 2 members of the school board as a member of an advisory committee to me, and 2 directors and myself went through with every principal their entire budget presentation. We asked questions, we asked for backup. Then we came to a period of time where we each started going through the presentations ourselves. In fact, before the last school committee meeting, we had a budget advisory committee, and the discussion was that today you would basically see what people asked for. In between then and now, I went through with a scalpel and removed what I would say, what principals felt they needed, but I could not support at this time under these financial times. So even going through and cutting $200,000-300,000, we're still, from what the town feels they can afford and where we are, there's $1,800,000. So I want you to listen today, not from, I can't afford anything, so I'm not going to listen, but from what is important that we can stand behind and stand up at town meeting and say, we need this for the education of our students. And if we don't get it, then we can't guarantee the educational product. And at a later time, in other venues, we can talk about what to do to bridge the gap. But today, it's about what people feel they need to do the job. And, you know, as many difficult questions as you want to ask, please ask. In your package, you have the entire presentation, the PowerPoint, and don't get scared, there's about 130 slides, but we did copy both sides of the paper and 2 slides to every paper to try to save a little bit of paper. In your, it starts off with a little narrative by me, and it's the basic thing, it's good morning, it's what I've already said. I'm asking you, this is in your, something like this. And this basically shows you what the original input was, what the preliminary to the town administrator was, and after the second review. So you can see there's already been 2 cuts to this budget done, equaling to about $268,000 have already been cut before you're seeing this. So I don't want anybody to walk away thinking that we came in here asking for a Cadillac, because we're not. We're asking for what we feel we need. Good morning. Good morning. Not a problem. There are 2 packages for you right there.
Barry,
Mr. Sweat?
you make the point that the budget before us, with some minor exceptions, is level service. Can you quantify the minor exceptions? What do you think the approximate dollar value is of those, quote, minor exceptions?
I would like to put that off and answer that later as we go through the this morning's slides. I think that will be clear.
Okay.
In your package that looks like this, let me see what's the next slide on this.
Jerry, I think that we need one more. I just looked it and have one.
That's all right, give mine up.
This has,
Yeah.
those are some extras right
This one.
there.
I got
of
one of
this
those.
kind of thing.
Give this to him. Okay.
Who didn't have one?
I think both Donna and Alan have one.
Yeah, because I left one for both of them.
We're all set.
You're all set? They're all
Let's
set.
go.
Okay. In the, so the first document inside of the plastic that not everybody has was the budget narrative. So we'll put that aside for the time being. And the second one, on one side of it shows the organizational chart. That's a, no, just go backwards, it's okay. It's an organizational chart that points out, and you will see it on the screen in a little while, in a little different format. But I've asked each of the principals and directors to have a chart like this so that you can see who reports to them. And you can see under the superintendent, we have the transportation manager, director of operations and finance, director of curriculum, director of pupil services, and the administrative assistant. And then under each of these people, you will see other people that report to them. But also under the superintendent, you will see all of the principals and coordinators, and then the number of teachers under them that report to them. So, all told, there are over 400 employees that are working through this enterprise. And many times at graduation, we talk about the fact that we feed more people than any restaurant in town. We transport more people than any other transportation company in town. And we educate more people than anyone else in town. It is the largest department within the town. On the opposite side of that piece of paper, again, trying to be frugal and using both sides of paper, you will find a one-page document that is this budget. And we have the available 12, available 13, that's voted by town meeting, and then what was budgeted and what is being asked for today. And this is after, this was as of December 27th, after I made my last attempt at making some cuts to this. So the difference that you see between last year and this year is $1,882,247. It will be broken down into two particular parts, one being net school spending and the other non-net, with non-net being the transportation department. That is included in that number. And if you look down, the last item on the left, transportation is its own account, and it shows that out of that $1,882,000, $124,769 was us looking for an increase in transportation. And after lunch, Mr. Tatro will be here and walk you through that particular request.
Is it accurate to say that available 13 includes both the McKinney-Vento money and the additional 120,000 voted in October?
That is correct. That's all appropriations done by both town meetings. The next document that you have within that file, and those of you that got one of the extra packets also has it, is an 18-page, two-sided Wareham Schools 214 budget detail. This has all of the accounts of the school system, and this is organized by site. So when a different administrator comes, in a little while, we'll have Mr. Gilmore sitting here. I will ask you to go to the page that the second, our account numbers are broken into 9 segments. The second segment is the number that says which site or specialty area is covered. So when we get to Mr. Gilmore, it's going to be an 00113 number that you're going to look for. Right now, we're at 00102, which is the superintendent's office, the business and finance, technology, and covers everything within that. And you can see that that particular account on this sheet went up by 0.5%, or $3,518 total from those accounts on this first page, and that the school committee accounts went up by 0. Okay, next slide, please. Again, showing on this slide the fiscal 12 total budget broken down by net school spending and non-net school spending. When you look at FY13, in the second column, net school spending, you will see that even after the additional Chapter 70 money, we were down. We were not even at the level of FY12. And even though that looks like it's $130,000 rounded one way or another, when a budget goes up just by being there by, I will say, 3%, when you go down 1%, that means I needed to cut 4% out of that budget in order to live within that budget that was set. This year, we're looking for a net school spending $1,757,000 more, or 7% increase. Next slide, please. Budget allocation. If you look at this slide and you look at the numbers, 76% is the red section, which is instructional services. If we then add to it 11%, which is for maintenance and heating, utilities, right away we're now at 87% of the budget between those two line items. If we add 7, which is the light blue for out of district, we're now around 94% of the budget. So if you want to know where the dollars are going, that's where the dollars are going. Student services with 3%, and another 3% for district leadership and administration. Next slide. This shows you what's happened to the number of employees in the Wareham Public Schools between fiscal 11 and fiscal 13. From 420 employees down to 395 in FY13. I think the graphic says what you think it says. It's not a growth. It's decreasing with regularity.
Can I ask you?
And if we look at this one, and I'll answer that question in 1 second, you can see from 11 to 12, we lost 12 employees, and between 12 and 13, we lost another 12 employees, or a total of 24 employees. These were not jobs not filled. These were people who lost their employment, and therefore we had to do more actually with less. Donna?
is the enrollment, what is the enrollment compared to the teachers up and the teachers down from last year and this year?
The enrollment is about 100 students less this year than last year. Enrollment, though, is a strange item in that you can lose 100 or 200 students and still need every single body that you have because perhaps an IEP called for an extra one-on-one assistant that now it's not a classroom teacher, but you need that employee. Or an extra special ed class because of the type of disabilities that are involved. So I have backup on that, and if you would like that, I will. I did not bring it today, but I have all the classifications, so you can see the largest number of people we lost last year and the year before were teachers.
Okay, I would like to have that.
Dr. Sylvia.
Dr. Rabinovich, is that 12.3, is that including the buyback we got in October?
Yes, sir.
Does that include buying back some of the teachers?
Yes. So where we started off at about 19 people, we brought back about 6, 7 people through the extra money that we got from Chapter 70, through cutting of sports, by we also used some money from a revolving account. So that's how we brought back the number of people that we brought back.
I don't know if you have another slide that depicts it, but to your point where, you know, we've lost 100 students, but still the teacher-to-student ratio is even going up in the 30s.
And you'll see that in both of the elementary school slides have those class size ones that you can see. Here's another view of the org chart where we have the community electing the school board. School board hires the superintendent, who then hires 3 directors and has an administrative assistant that then deals with all the principals and coordinators. There are 5 assistant principals, 3 instructional leaders, 251 teachers, 62 paraprofessionals, and 2,853 students as of October 1st. Actually, that number now is 2,900 because it's a moving target. Every enrollment report seems to change. Next slide. Here is the one page for without transportation. This shows where the major increases are. The school committee is aware of within every account, one of the segments is called a function code. It's a 4-digit number that we have to report to the Department of Education to show them how we spend our funds every year. So teacher salaries, and I have another slide that will actually show what part of that is because of collective bargaining. But teacher salaries, $601,098, or 4.9%. And again, I will explain that on the next slide in more greater detail. Substitutes, after looking at what was actually spent and after the year before doing some cuts, the feeling was we needed to increase substitutes by close to $30,000. Paraprofessional salaries. We instituted a full-day, universal full-day kindergarten. In this community, it is not just something nice to have, we need it. Our students need to start off on an even playing field so that every child has a full-day kindergarten program. Now, because we have this full-day kindergarten, we cannot charge tuition any longer, and the tuition is what paid that $130,000. I am hoping that we are going to get additional Chapter 70 money because now each of those kindergarten children are counted as a full student, where before you could only charge, we only got half amount under Chapter 70 because we got tuition for the other half a day. So it should be an offset, but at this point, that doesn't happen until those numbers come out. So at this point, This is the cost that we had to budget, $130,259. Textbooks, you will remember, was zero last year. We listened, we worked together, we came up with a strategy, it did not work. So if you cut that over 2 years, it is not quite as big as that looks, $355,000, and the number was actually close to $600,000. Mrs. Rotella and I had both of our elementary principals in and sat with them and asked them to come up with a multi-year plan to get where they needed to go instead of getting there in 1 year. So we were able to cut at least $150,000 out of that request already. I'm sorry, Mr. Sweat.
When we put in the all-day, full-day kindergarten, the amount of additional revenue was not insignificant, but I was also, if my memory serves me correctly, there was a lag between when we could see that. So we're not gonna see it this year, but we would see it
The year
next
after.
year.
That is correct.
Has the town administrator been informed as to what that incremental revenue might represent?
That is hard to put a number to. I've spoken to Roger Hatch from DOE Finance. And the problem is that depending on how they do the formula, because our number of students in the district has gone down, there may be an offset in the totals.
Still, it would have been worse.
It would have been worse if we
Right.
didn't, yes. And we will have to pull that out to show people. But at this actual dollars, until that number comes out from the state, I really can't say.
Just something for you to be aware of and to be communicating about.
Technology, again, those are just increases. That was also taken out of the budget last year. Okay, agricultural school. That is just the increase. We have 12 students who attend Bristol Aggie. Wareham does not belong to that district like we do, we're Upper Cape. So any of our students, and you know, as part of your budget, you have to plan for those students that are going to Upper Cape because you get an assessment. Well, 12 students wanted to go to the agricultural school because they offered things that Upper Cape did not offer. It costs us approximately $18,000 a year per child. And in most other communities, that goes right into the town budget, just like the Upper Cape number. That has been paid out of this budget for as long as I can remember. And this year it went up $54,000. So when we talk later about out-of-district costs, be aware that about $200,000 of that are for those students that are going to the agricultural school. Yes, sir.
Dr. Benovich, the Bristol Aggie is partially subsidized. Is that right?
I get no subsidy.
Okay.
I mean, they must get something from the state, but they don't get it. As far as I know, they don't get any of our Chapter 70 money because our students are out of their district, so to speak. So they're tuitioned in, and we wind up paying the tuition just like when we send a child to a out-of-district special ed placement.
Because I had heard that some of their tuitions were going up because their subsidies they were losing, so I was worried that was
So,
right.
yeah, in other words, that bill could go up even
Yeah.
further. Thank you. I wasn't aware of that.
I need to make a point because you correctly referred to the issue of what I'll call fixed costs versus variable costs. It's a huge issue in many enterprises, and it's certainly true in schools. Every time a parent believes that their child has a better opportunity for an education in Bristol, Aggie, Upper Cape, or somewhere else, and they don't enroll in the Wareham Public Schools, then we have a fixed cost, variable cost. And on top of that, with the exception of school choice, for Upper Cape and Bristol Aggie, it not only creates a fixed cost, variable cost problem, their cost per student is significantly higher than our costs. So we have a financial interest in convincing every parent that their best opportunity to get a great education is in specifically Wareham High School, but in general in Wareham Public Schools. Let's not forget that. And the less we invest in our school system, the more the parents will be convinced that they should go somewhere else, and it will exacerbate the very problem that Barry has alluded to. So please, let's not forget that investment is not only a moral responsibility, it's also a financially sound thing to do, because it increases the likelihood that parents will choose to have their children educated in this school system. Sorry for the speech. Won't be the last one.
Well, could I just build on that just for a second?
Yes,
The
sir.
thing of it is people lose sight of the fact that every time, and it's not just the Aggie school, but other than Upper Cape, every time a kid leaves our district, that Chapter 70 reimbursement goes with it.
That is correct.
So
It's another $6,000 that leaves the door as
absolutely,
well.
and you multiply $6,000 after a number of kids, and you're talking about a considerable amount of money that's leaving the district.
Leaving the town.
And so, like Jeff says, that's an investment in our future, but it's also an investment in making sure that we're doing the best we possibly can to educate our own kids, our own students locally, in our own district. So, I'm sorry, but.
Don't apologize. Keep it up.
And the last item on here is out-of-district tuition. Now, $327,820. Some people could say, my God, what happened? Why aren't we holding our hand on that? The problem is, these are all move-ins. They're not children that already lived in Wareham and that we have been working with. These are people that have moved in, whose children were in out-of-district placements, that we now have become financially responsible for. That's $327,820 fixed cost. I've got no say over it. And if I don't send them, we'll get sued. Next slide, please. All right, I promised you I would explain about the $600,000 in teacher salaries. $435,628 are fixed because of collective bargaining. That is a 2% raise plus steps and lanes. Before people say, oh my God, how could you give away that much money? Let me explain. It was a 3-year contract. The first year was 0. The second year was 1.5%. The third was 2%. I don't think 3.5% over 3 years was bad negotiating. If I had a crystal ball and knew that the Congress and the economy would be acting the way they did, I suppose I would have negotiated differently. So that's money we owe. $97,350 grants. That means the federal government has reduced our grants. So positions that were paid for by grants now have fallen back into the local educational authority. $26,120 stipends for monitors. These are programs where we have parents dropping off children to this school at 6:45 in the morning because they need to get to work, but teachers aren't on duty until 7:30. Well, it's an unsafe situation. You need somebody to monitor those youngsters. We have to pay monitors to do that. And that is happening at the high school, the middle school, and both elementary schools. So they're AM monitors. They may also have some detention programs in here, so when somebody stays with somebody on a Friday afternoon at the elementary school because they've been naughty, that helps pay for it. Yes, sir.
I'll just add that they do a hell of a job too, and they do, and it's actually a good safety thing too, with all that chaos in the morning. I mean, I've gone in there to drop something off for my son, signed in, forgot to put my sticker on, I didn't make it around the corner, and one of those monitors said, listen, did you sign in? Like, yeah, but you have to go back and put that sticker on, so safety too.
Thank you. Okay, oh yes, and in the presentation you will see that Mrs. Siemens asked for 3 new teachers plus an adjustment counselor. In this budget, there is only 1 new teaching salary. That's $42,000 budgeted. There it is, and that's to make sure that the class size doesn't go up to 28 or 30 in the classroom.
That's one of those minor exceptions
That is the only exception that I have put into this budget.
to level service.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Gilmore, it's all yours.
The one teacher from mine.
There it is.
Good morning.
Good morning, Howard.
Good morning.
Happy New Year, Howard.
Before we start, Dr. Ramirez,
Yes,
on the
sir.
organizational chart, I always have problems with this because it's such a mix of things here, all right? We have non-school, non-net and net spending. They're on the
Yes.
same chart, they're handled by 2 different amounts. Are there also positions in here that are funded by grant rather than by the town?
Yes, sir.
All right, I think that's what causes some confusion too, though. Is there any way to modify this chart in such a way that we could see the source, i.e. grants, all right, or net and non-net? So that we understand that, you know, there are some positions that may be on here, but they're not part of the budget, they're paid by grant.
The only non-net spending that is on that chart is transportation.
Right, but I'm concerned about the grants, where it looks here like we're supporting maybe some paralegals, right, which are basically the grant funded, and vice versa. I don't have the specifics.
All
I
right,
know that.
I will provide you a chart that I have. It's not organized as an organizational chart.
Right.
But it has the budgeted positions, and it shows per the whole system, how many are LEA, Local Education Authority funded,
Right.
how many grant funded, how many revolving account funded, and then total.
Okay, one of
All
the
right.
reasons I raises this with me is I'm looking at the cafeteria workers.
Right, and
That's
they all,
grant, right, and that's all
Right.
revolving fund. So that's really not part of the budget we're looking at today.
right, but from an organizational structure, we have a cafeteria manager who works directly under the operations and finance director. Right now, since she's out ill under me, so it's a responsibility. So this is more, instead of a budgeted organizational chart, this is more of a flow chart of who's responsible to whom.
Okay, then I guess what I'm asking for is a budget organizational chart that I can compare this to.
I'm
which
sure
might
Mr.
be
Sweat will
lining
be able
through
to help
some of
me with
these
that.
items. Pardon?
I said, I'll ask Jeff for help.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not looking for an answer for this now, but perhaps Jan, when you're doing your presentation, one of the things that you brought up was something that's always concerned me, which is sort of an educational form of bait and switch, which is to say they lure you in with a grant, and then the grant disappears, and you have the expenses remaining that get folded into the LEA. When you're doing your presentation, if you could elaborate on that, because it seems to me that we may not literally be able to afford to fold it into the LEA, and it would be interesting to know how many times that has occurred, for example, over the last 5 years, and the value, what are we absorbing into the LEA that used to be grant funded?
I'll be happy to, and I think it's a question for both me and Mr. Luzon
Fine,
with
okay.
both of those federal funds, because those are huge federal, you're absolutely right.
Right, if we can move on, since Mr. Gilmore, I'm already 17 minutes late for, and since this was supposed to end at 3:30, you may all be missing dinner tonight. Mr. Gilmore.
The Wareham Middle School budget for 2013, 2014.
Mr. Gilmore?
Yes.
Can you turn the microphone towards you when you talk?
Oh, certainly.
You didn't ask me to, was I just too loud?
Yes.
You and Liz both are fine.
Thanks a lot, Vice Chair.
The enrollment for the 2013, 2014 will remain basically the same, 665 students. We have 226 eighth graders going out, and we will have 226 sixth graders, fifth graders coming into sixth grade next year. So we stay the same population-wise. We are down this year about 10 students at this particular time from where we ended last year. Okay. Jan? That is our organizational chart. Obviously, the two assistant principals, they're broken down into, one has the responsibility, Sandy Pond has grade 6 responsibility, Dan Minkle has grade 7 responsibility, and they each share an 8th grade team. One shares the blue team, one shares the silver team. The rest of it is pretty self-explanatory. Total of 52 teachers being evaluated, not counting the two assistant principals and instructional leader. The instructional leader is Tracy Cote. She is full-time in this building. Okay. Yep. And these are just the people who are the teachers underneath. You'll notice that science and social studies are put together. Social studies is a common top subject at grades 6 and 7. And at 8th grade, we have a social studies teacher for each of the 8th grade teams, the blue team and the silver team. Next. When I presented the budget to Dr. Rabinovich, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. The budget was up about 56%. When I got the slides for the presentation, I noticed that it had not increased. So the slides that you will now see limits the amount of discussion that we probably need to have at this point. But the two major increases, two of them, the copier lease, which we have really no control over, and that's up $825, and the intramurals clubs field trips. This is the only place that anything in grade 5 is referenced. And the rest of the budget is all due, is just responsible for grade 6, 7, and 8, and the grade 5 is a discussion for the future. But grade 5, I had put in there $4,100 for an orientation program. We have a similar one for grade 6 students at Camp Linden, but I wanted to put something in there that wouldn't necessarily be in the elementary school budgets that I needed to account for if, in fact, that decision is made by the school committee. That would be taken out, obviously, if the 5th grade isn't coming to the middle school.
One interruption. Could people make sure that their phones are not near the microphones? Someone's phone is setting off one of the microphones right now, and it's creating distortion.
The increase for the intramurals club and field trip, that cost was $8,440 over last year, and $4,100 of that was for the grade 5 orientation. Mostly it was trying to get the, we have late buses on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, so that students can participate in clubs and activities, get extra homework help as well in the afternoon. So that's that particular increase. And the rest of the slides are really what we had requested, and the majority of it really, as you would look at it, has to do with computer supplies, computer repair, and computer software. And between those three items, the budget was up about $140,000. Okay, $86,400 just in computer supplies, trying to replace the equipment that we have, trying to upgrade it. Have what great deal of difficulties. Most of it is 10 years old. And I came in last year and had the same request for you for $66,900. It just increased a bit for this year. Okay. For the instructional supplies, it was really social studies and music, which we had not put money into, significant money into. That was the request, and that came out to about $6,000 additional just for social studies and music. Next slide, Jim. There's the computer maintenance. Computer software, that was an interesting one. Right now we have Study Island, and that costs us about $8,500. And that we said, would you take a look at Study Island or some facsimile thereof? At the present time, we have online instruction going with our French classes due to the fact that we were not able to find someone who was certified in French and in Spanish. Those are online instructional classes, and they are going quite well. And the students seem to be doing the things that they need to do to learn the language, the French language. And our hope was that we would be able to continue online instruction, not necessarily in French, but that would certainly be an option, but to provide other opportunities for students to proceed, to enrich whatever we might need to do, and that was an opportunity that we put in there, and that was about $30,000. And then the last part is the Everyday Math is an online program that the curriculum office had picked up in the past that we now absorb the cost, and that's about $5,000. And that wasn't in there, okay? And lastly, this was the staffing request from the middle school to the superintendent. The first was an English reading interventionist. We started RTI in grade 6 this year. We trained all of the 6th grade staff. And the next step was to begin the intervention at Tier 3 and to provide a person for that. That was the request for next year so that that could happen. The adjustment counselor, I think you will see that the 2 elementary schools and the middle school all requested some form of an adjustment counselor, and that was to work with the populations that we have in our special programs, and for the students who have bring to the learning environment some significant some significant problems. Math interventionist was the third as far as the requests were concerned. Of the paras, we were hopeful to get someone to be able to monitor the technology lab on a full-time basis. And then the special ed paraprofessionals were simply to support the programs that we already have in place. And what happens is that we have students who need to go out at various grades as part of the inclusion. We have kids who stay within the learning centers, within the adjustment program, within our ASD program, but we also have some of those kids going out for science, for social studies, for other subject matter, and those paraprofessionals were necessary because we have a significant population, from my perspective, coming into the ASD program and the adjustment program from the 2 elementary schools into grade 6 for next year. The custodian was a request. This building is used tremendously. About 3 years ago, we lost the custodian. It would be nice to have brought that back.
Mr. Gilmore,
Yes.
maybe through you to the superintendent. The custodian requests, does that go from a wish list to a necessity based on whether or not the 5th graders come here?
Oh, yes, that's another conversation. This was, everything I've said so far, except for the money for orientation for grade 5, was a request for present grade 6, 7, and 8.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just before you finish, Howard, if people in their 22-page, or whatever the number, 18-page document can go to page 12 of 18, you will see on page 12 of 18 through 13 of 18, all of the middle school accounts. Every single penny that is spent through this site is listed in every single account, so that the total is $4,990,376. And let's see if there's another one in that that extra one. Maybe there's one right there that you can have it back. It would be in the, Janice, it would be in that one. That's the one I think that it should be. So if you go to page 12 of 18 and then 13 of 18, you will see all the middle school accounts. And
I have a different total. It's a lot smaller.
no, you're not looking at,
Wareham High School.
They're out of sequence, Barry.
if you take it out of the thing, perhaps.
Barry, they're out of sequence.
They're out of sequence?
Yeah, so the rest of,
Oh, I see.
of the
Yeah.
middle school is actually after
So
14 of 18.
if you perhaps take it out of the binder and you can move it around, I'm sorry.
So you'll find it.
That's what I did, is I took mine out of the binder and
Bless you.
makes it a little bit easier to maneuver.
So in theirs, it's after 14 of 18, on the back page of that.
We didn't have any of those double-sided folders with pockets that I was looking for yesterday, without writing on them, because we usually take them and reuse them from other places that we get them.
If you turn them over, they're upside down.
Yes.
It's easier to.
So, page 12 of 18 and page 13 of 18 gives you all the middle school accounts. And perhaps, Howard, the 28,000 for textbooks, you may just want to talk about that, because I understand it's less than what was needed in 12. You had 0 in 13, but it's 28,000, so it's part of that increase in textbooks.
The request is for the foreign language is $3,600, for social studies text, $6,000. Came out to my $28,221. Obviously, that will have to go back and be cut back to the request that, if am I on the right line?
28,221 is what I see that's in the budget.
And
That's what I believe
and
you
that's
requested.
yes, and that's what we have. So what we tried to do is to make sure that we had the math program and the various science, math, English language arts, foreign language, that those were taken care of. Interestingly enough, there is one item in there that's called lamps and bulbs for $5,000, but that's where it belongs in there. So other than that, it's all on text and materials necessary for the curriculums to be implemented.
So any of the finance committee or school committee have any questions about any of the middle school accounts while Mr. Gilmore is here? Dr. Sylvia?
Want two pieces of clarification, if you don't mind, Mr. Gilmore. On the social studies now, you've got a textbook request for social studies, and I know that was kind of a controversial issue last year.
Yes.
Does that indicate the fact that we are now on a full-time, full-range social studies program at the middle school?
We are, yes.
So that necessitates the need for
That's
textbooks?
correct.
Because that was one of the reasons for the big controversy, is there was a way to cut costs, but I was one of the ones that was critical of it, but I just want the finance committee to know that this is a direct result of the fact that we put this in as a full-time curriculum area.
Yes, it is.
Okay. The second thing is, and you can respond to it, or maybe Mr. Luzon can respond to it later. I'm very concerned about the staffing that has not been included in this budget. And I understand that we all have to go in there with a dose of reality, and we have to look at it through a cutting lens. However, we as a school committee gave our central administration direct marching orders and our school building principals. The direct marching orders was to increase test scores and to make sure that the academic achievement of our students was second to none. And one of the major areas of strategy, one of the major strategies that we've put in place for that is RTI. And as I know, as RTI progresses and as we implement the RTI program, interventionist is certainly a critical part of the RTI program. So I'm just concerned about the fact that we've put in a program as a strategy to increase test scores for early intervention, and yet we see two of the interventionists that you proposed in the middle school not making the budget. I have a concern over that. Comment on that?
I have no comment on it, other than the fact that it would be nice to have, but I realize the fiscal reality as well, so.
Well, is it nice to have, or is it necessary
It
to
is-
have?
it is-
There's
well,
a big
we're in-
difference between the two.
We're in our first year of it, okay? We just had the training of staff. We're working with the coach that comes in and meets with us on a monthly basis. We've been able to get the English language arts teachers and special ed teachers that are involved at the sixth grade level, as well as the math teachers. So we've got everybody involved with that. We do not have an interventionist right now, but we're just beginning to develop those strategies which would lead to the tier 3 intervention and to the need for a person. So we also know that the students who are at the present fifth grade have had fourth grade, fifth grade, and now will be going into sixth grade, and that we would need to be able to address that particular issue. And that's why those positions were there. So are they a necessity? The answer is yes. But they were requested based on RTI being fully implemented in grade 6. Okay, our hope was that 7th and 8th grade would continue, but I don't think that's on the horizon right at the moment. So the intent was grade 6 because students have had it at grade 4, they've had it at grade 5, we trained our staff, we've been working to make sure that it gets implemented, and we needed that additional person, if you will, or persons, both in ELA and math. When you look at our test scores, I think over the last 5 years, you'll find that the math there has been some real successes with math with some of the things that we have done. But nevertheless, we still need additional help with that intervention on a daily basis.
You see, this is my biggest concern, and it's my biggest, and I don't want to prolong the meeting, but my biggest concern is the fact that we institute programs to assist and to aid in student achievement, and then we pull out the rug from underneath our administrators. And we say, well, why isn't it getting done? Well, we know that we're going to have interventionists at some point in time for the response to intervention program, and yet we don't fund it. And then we say, well, what's wrong with Wareham? So that's my frustration.
Understood.
I don't want to add to what Cliff had just said, but I do share what he said, and I've expressed as much to the superintendent as well.
The adjustment counselor.
Yes.
I'm struggling with the fact that a student would have had 5.5, 6 years, depending on whether they were in half-day or full-day kindergarten, of time to adjust to a educational environment, and yet you're receiving students who are incapable of accepting the environment in which you're offering for to receive an education. Why is an adjustment counselor needed after almost 6 years of schooling?
Howard, if I can, and since this is a concern of the entire district, since both elementary schools and the middle school,
Which is
have
why I brought it
asked,
up.
In a community with 50+% on free and reduced lunch, there are social issues that get in the way of education. If a child in 5th grade has a parent who dies, who divorces, or goes through some other traumatic experience, yes, when that child comes to 6th grade, they're in need of intense counseling. They're in need of services that go beyond the school. An adjustment counselor, different from a guidance counselor, is somebody that is going to get involved in the entire family. They're going to make sure the family has services. They'll bring in outside sources. They will make home visits. It is different than the traditional, what we think of as our guidance counselors. Also, here at the middle school, with 2 psychologists and 1 guidance counselor for 650 or 60 children, they only have half of their day to do the other part of the job, because the other half of the day, they are team chairperson people for special education. So that's why Mr. Gilmore, I believe, is asking for this particular position. And the reason it's not in here, even though I truly believe it is needed, is because looking from reality of what, this request could have been double what it is. But knowing that we can't afford it has led me to come in here without trying to make major changes to what we already have, just trying to support what we already have in place without bringing other enhancements. So I don't, Howard can be free to answer more if he wishes.
I think it's well stated.
Donna?
I just have a comment on that, and as you said, that 50% of the children in the school system are free or plus lunch program. It just seems to me that the school department is taking over the mental health department as well. And should we, I mean, if they qualify for 50%, if they qualify for free lunch, most of them are going to qualify for mental health help and probably are getting it in the private sector. And I just think it's difficult that we have to put this in our budget as far as to educate our children. So we got to fix them mentally, and then we got to educate them. It seems like an awful lot of a burden to be putting on the school system, and we should be passing this on to the mental health community.
Just as a segue, actually, as you said, many of our children qualify for Medicaid, okay? The school department actually bills for Medicaid services for some of those psychologists and therapists and so forth. And the town receives over $300,000 a year for the services provided by the school department. In many communities, that is a direct addition to the school department budget. It has not been in Wareham.
Second question for Howard. Do you track the percentage or absolute numbers or both of your 8th graders that move on to the high school?
Should I ask if you have anything stronger?
Excuse me?
It's okay. Sorry.
If you're saying when they leave me, what happens to them?
Yes.
And the answer is, from a number point of view, the answer is yes. And when the 8th grade goes over to the high school as 9th graders, we meet with the administration and the dean and go through the students and those of concern, those that are the plus and the minuses, okay? I also, know what happened to them at the end of 9th grade. So that the part that I look at is how many failures of those 9th graders.
Well, I admire that, but that wasn't what I was getting at.
Okay.
What I was getting at is what level of attrition exists from 8th to 9th grade, and has it been fairly stable?
I would say over the last 2 years it has increased.
And where are they generally going?
A good percentage of them went to the vocational technical school.
An increasing percentage?
Yes.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions for Mr. Gilmore, I'd like to move the presentation on, but
I do have one question. I'm looking at the regular teacher salary, the special ed salary.
Mr. Hickman, could you talk into the microphone in front of us?
Yes, there was a $20,000 drop in the regular salaries and a $33,000 increase in the sped salaries. Is that solely a shift in financial resources, or is there a headcount change there? Do we drop a regular teacher and pick up a sped teacher?
There was a drop in a teaching position at the middle school last year, so they had a drop in personnel in the regular teaching salary. In special education, I don't believe there was another body.
No, that's,
Yes.
Yes.
Well, we had the increase in the ASD program from last year.
Okay.
Well,
And- but-
we also picked up that probably one of the elementary schools, Deacon's would have lost, a one-to-one that we got this year. And so that salary would
So
have been.
paraprofessional salary was
in
now
the-
budgeted in the middle school rather than one of the
But
elementary
in,
schools.
but in this middle school sped teacher line, the only increase has been the increase of a program for autistic children from 1 year to the next. But of that $739,000 salary, the 4.8% increase of $33,000 would be predominantly through step and lane increases.
I realize that. My question was there a head count change?
No,
No,
Okay.
other than that one paraprofessional.
but, yeah, different line though.
But with the
Yeah.
exception of the one paraprofessional?
But that's not that line,
No,
Frank.
that's not that one.
That's a paraprofessional line.
Okay, so there's no head count change?
Correct.
No.
In either classification?
Right.
And the difficult thing, and you know, because you've seen it before and gone through this, but beyond a simple raise of a 2%, somebody could have gone from having a Bachelor of 15 into a master's degree. So they make a step lane, and they were a third-year teacher, and now they're a fourth-year teacher. So they made a lane and a step and a 2%. Those things happen when people get higher degrees. In our schedule, the teacher salary schedule, it's bachelor's 15, master's degree, master's 15, and then 2 masters or a CAGS or a doctorate. So there are these steps that they make along the way. So where we start below any of our neighbors for a starting salary here in Wareham, we end up on par with other folks because of those steps and lanes increases.
So it's basically financial resources?
Yes, it is.
Not people. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Gilmore.
Thank you.
Stepping in is Mr. Scott Palladino, who is our high school principal. And if we look, Mr. Palladino's chart of accounts begin on page 14 of 18 and continue through page 16 of 18. So the bottom line that Mr. Palladino is in charge of is $6,545,665. And so setting that as the frame.
Okay. All right, well, actually, ironically, to the left of this picture, as I left the school this morning, there were about 12 people working on the gym roof, so I'm happy to report that that gym roof is in progress, and I was told that we should be up and running with a new roof for tomorrow evening, so
By
that is
tomorrow night, the whole thing should be done?
the whole thing should be done tomorrow night, so for those of you...
Guess those candles paid off.
For those of you fans of basketball, I think we'll be in good shape moving forward, and obviously, it also houses 2 to 3 classrooms during the day, so we're very excited about that, but we still have some more work to do on the rest of the roof, but that will come, I believe, in due time. So, Wareham High School currently houses 632 students. We're anticipating about 650 students next year, and we feel that should stay pretty consistent for the next few years. Last year, as you may be aware, we asked our teachers to take on an extra class. They're all teaching one extra class, both last year and this year. And if you take a look at the organizational chart, you have me as the principal, I have an assistant principal. I also have 7 department heads that teach, but are also responsible for one of the 7 departments. I have 4 teaching deans that teach about 30% of the time, and they also deal with discipline for each grade level. We have 3 guidance counselors, 1 adjustment counselor, 1 school psychologist, and we have 1 full-time nurse split between 2 people. One's a .6, one's a .4. In the teaching fields, we have 7.6 social studies and JROTC teachers, 13 special ed teachers, 3.5 art/music teachers, and 4.5 foreign language teachers. We have 6 science teachers, 6 math teachers, 7.3 English teachers, 3.5 business and technology teachers, 3.5 health and phys ed teachers, 13 teacher assistants, 6 custodians, 6 cafeteria workers. So that is the organizational chart of Wareham High School. Moving on to the budgeted accounts, obviously there were some things that we were looking to add. They were not added. The superintendent took some cuts here, and I'll go through what was asked and what was cut. The printing and paging, if you want me to go through this line item by line item, stays pretty consistent. General office supplies, the cost is increasing. We asked for a little more money. We got $1,788 less. Our conferences, graduation, and memberships, it stays pretty consistent. $15,000 is where we're at, and we'll stay there, and we did not ask for anything else. Last year, as you're aware, I know Dr. Vinovich prefaced this, we were not allowed to order any textbooks. Previously, we had $16,000 in textbooks, which really wouldn't even account for a whole classroom set. We have asked for $125,000 to help out in the math department. Currently, our math students either don't have textbooks, share textbooks, or have a classroom set that's about 14 years old. We need to, I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna, so if you could say to folks, either between yourself or Janice, first of all, approximately how much is one new high school math textbook?
Right, you're looking at about $100 for a math textbook.
All right, about $100 per book.
Per book, and that doesn't include any of the extras that you can get, supplementation, instructional opportunities for the teacher. That's just a straight book.
So in your incoming freshman class, what do you expect there to be?
We'll be hovering around 210, 212 students.
Okay. So if you want to do the math, that's why he's looking, and that's, you're looking for books. Is that going to provide enough books for all 4 years?
That will be very close for 4 years. We need the students now, as you, I know you're aware, and I hope most of the people are aware, they need 4 years of math now. That's different than before. Before, 67% of our kids only needed 3 years. If a student scored needs improvement in their math MCAS, they were what we call EPP students that needed a 4th year of math. So that was roughly a third of our population. So now we have students that need 4 years of math, so there is a need for a 4th year of math and books to be purchased.
If I may just
Please.
add to this. As many of you, if not all of you, are aware, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has adopted the National Common Core State Standards and have added to that. These are national curriculum standards of which all students across the United States, well, let me verify that, 48 of the 50 states have adopted, plus the District of Columbia. They will be assessed on these standards, and that is a determinant of high school graduation. Part of those standards is a Mass Core course of study, and that has increased the requirements for every student who graduates as of 2013 from a Massachusetts high school. They must have 4 years of math, 4 years of English, 3 years of a lab science, and 3 years of history. In addition to that, they need 2 years of the same foreign language, 4 years or at least a semester experience of phys ed all 4 years of high school, and a predeterminate number of electives, such as technology. To meet that course of studies, we have had to do a number of things. One of the first things that Mr. Palladino did was adjust the schedule at the high school, going to a block schedule of 4 classes per day. These are extended class periods of just about 90 minutes, and they alternate every other day, or an A-B schedule. This allows students to take 8 subjects a year instead of the 6. Therefore, they're able to meet the Mass Core course of studies. Not to confuse us with the Common Core state standards, which actually speak to not just a course of studies, but speak to what is taught in those courses. That has drastically changed. As of September 2013, or in 9 months, we need to have fully implemented in the high school the new Common Core standards. How has that changed? Algebra 1 is not the Algebra 1 when any of us were in school. The new Algebra 1 literally begins halfway through. So it's like second semester Algebra 1 and includes first semester of what used to be Algebra 2. Geometry has also increased. Now, obviously, these changes have affected the middle school as well. We have not implemented those changes at the high school. We have begun to train teachers this year and to rewrite the curriculum to include this accelerated math program. Algebra 2, as of September, will include trigonometry. All students will have completed all of Algebra 2 plus trigonometry by the end of 11th grade. In 12th grade, they have the option of going into calculus or statistics. Similar impact has been felt in all of the sciences and all of the English language arts as to what course of studies is required. And this is why the need for textbooks. And in math, it is a drastic need. We currently have no textbooks that are aligned with the materials the students need. We have a few textbooks that students can share where we can flip back and forth between an Algebra 1 and an Algebra 2 textbook for our Algebra 1 students next year. And that is why I've strongly supported Mr. Palladino's request for the $125,000. What this will afford is us to purchase books and online access to augment those books for all students.
Thank you.
Just one point. I don't want the point to be lost that in the very beginning that students today either don't have a book or they're sharing a book. And I want everyone from a business sense to think about that. Going to work and all of a sudden somebody saying to you, this is the job that you are responsible for, this is the job that you have to do, but I'm not going to give you any tools so that you can make that happen, or you're going to have to share with your cubicle mate to do that. What we're doing is we continue to put barriers in front of our students when it comes to learning. And this is, this is where I felt like I had to speak up, because I've seen this now for the past 3 years. We keep asking for books and technology, and this is where we continue to not fund or cut it. And again, what we're doing is we're continuing to put huge barriers in front of our students, and it's affecting student learning, and we're seeing it.
Right, and the parents get frustrated because when we had books, they could go home and there was an explanation of how to do the problem. Now we're photocopying worksheets to send home without books, and there's really not a lot of instruction that goes along with that. So there's a lot of frustration. The new textbooks not only model how to solve the problem, but they also have the problems in there. So it's one complete packet. It's having the book is the key. A couple years ago, 2 years ago to be precise, we purchased books in our Intro to Physical World, which is a freshman science class. And in 1 year, we saw the MCAS scores in that class go up 11%. So obviously, there's a correlation there. And that's just in 1 year. And now these teachers have had another year. This year is their second year with that textbook under their belt. And we anticipate scores going up again in the physics MCAS. So we're pretty excited about what's going on in science. And this is what we need. I mean, if you look at what I've requested, although I did request one staff member, that was eliminated. This is what we need at the high school, and it's been sorely needed for some time, so I hope we can have the support for that. Moving on to instructional supplies. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Sweat.
What is your view of the, I'll call it and you may or may not deserve this, the Khan Academy model, where kids are learning at home without a textbook, online,
Right.
and then they're being coached at school so that they, and frequently on a one-on-one basis, so that what they learn, you can corroborate that they in fact read it, learned it, and they're getting one-on-one attention, and of course, to some extent, they're going at their own pace. What is your view of that model from both an educational perspective as well as a cost perspective?
Right. I think it's a great model. I think it's something you'll see in the future. I don't think we're ready for that yet. I don't think we're there yet at this point. But I do feel that it's something that can work. Certainly there'd have to be a lot of professional development for the staff member who's going to have that model in their classroom. And certainly, I don't think as a community we're at that point where we are comfortable that 99% of the students have access to online services at home.
Is that your biggest concern in terms of not being ready for it?
That's my biggest concern.
The
Correct.
families, structure.
Staff, correct.
Not that it's not the way we should be heading, but we need interim steps for both the staff and the family.
Correct.
Another case of the family, it's, we're doing a job.
Yeah. And you have to be reasonably sure the student has a basic foundation in which to function within that system. I can't with any sense of certainty say that that is the case right now.
Thank you.
No problem.
What's the cost? You had two parts of it. There's a method and then the relative cost.
I thought it was unfair to pursue the cost for a number of reasons. One is, there's no reason Scott should have been prepared to answer that question. And the cost is probably less, but there are other aspects to it that make it difficult to quantify. The biggest issue, of course, is access to the videos at home or in some place. How do you ensure that infrastructure exists both within the schools because of the technology, but also at home? And then we haven't eliminated the teacher because it's these people who think you can have 1,000 people in the class are, to me, as a pipe dream. The amount of coaching that's necessary is still critically important. So the teacher still exists. Professional development for the teacher is a cost. So I'm with you, and I think Scott is with us, that it's a very interesting direction to go, but I don't think it's fair to spend a lot of time asking him to quantify the cost at this moment in time. But that's my view. If you want to ask a question, go for it.
Well, yeah, I mean, you asked the question.
Yes, I
as
did.
to what's the relative cost, and that didn't get answered, so that's why I asked it. West Side.
I appreciate that.
Trying to keep going.
Do you have a view on the cost?
No, I'm not prepared to even make a comment on that. I haven't investigated the cost because it's unrealistic at this point.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of classrooms out there that are using this approach, and they must have some cost experience. So somehow the information's available.
Yeah, the one thing that, sorry to interrupt, the one thing that I'll say about that is that we've been talking at the Technology and Curriculum Committee just about Wareham getting the basic foundation in our school system. So right now we have problems with bandwidth and access even here. So, and we do have some preliminary costs on that. And I think that's the first step, then talking about what's needed in each one of the individual schools and at home. So it is one of those things that we need to take a look at as a step process, and the first is the basic foundation, which we have to get done.
And the interesting thing is, there was a public television presentation on this on a school system that is doing a modification of this. Turns out it wasn't working. It literally wasn't working. There was computers everywhere, all sorts of videos, but it wasn't working. So the price of failure is, the experimentation on children is always something that has offended me. There's lots of places we can experiment, but it doesn't seem to me we should waste a whole year of a child's life on something that isn't working. So we need to really make sure that what we're going to do is superior, is going to work, and that we're not sacrificing kids at the same time that we're doing it. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it on a small scale, and in fact, in this very building, we're doing something like this on a small scale. But that's the way we should be doing it. I probably shouldn't have even asked the question because it's such a diversion, but it's such an interesting area of education that I think I was glad that Scott, in general, thinks it's something we could and perhaps even should move to, but we're just not ready for it.
Alan, quick question. You had an iPad program you implemented this year. Have you had any results from that yet?
The iPad pilot program, because, with 2,800 students, I think we have about 120 iPads for students, is split up so that we have a class or two in each of our buildings. And at the end of last year, we weren't at the point to be able to say that it changed the education, but did it enhance scores? We don't have the data to prove that yet.
The reason why I bring it up, there was an article just recently, I believe it was done through Nexus, which is has a new computer out, small one, tablet. I think it's a Nexus 7. They're about to release, I think, in a few months, a version for third world countries. Maybe we follow that thing for about $99. But it's the same one virtually that's selling for $200 with probably some features out which we don't need. But if we're going to spend $100 for a textbook, maybe it's better to look at something like that, which is $99, which you can load in your textbook. You know, here through the school, if kids don't have Wi-Fi at home, it's not a problem. Because you put it into a PDF file, load it in, and every time they make a change to the textbook, the kids are here, the textbook gets updated, so it's not a throwaway. Because if it's $100 for a textbook and it's $99 for a version of this, there's a lot more versatility there.
It's why we began as a pilot, because there are a number of issues when you ramp it up. So, 100 of these throughout the district versus 2,800 of them.
I understand. I'm just saying that.
When we're talking about Wi-Fi capacity. So we are building the infrastructure now, and you will see within the budgets, for instance, there's a line item for business class internet service. We have been using the free cable modem that the school gets, which is equal to the one you had in your home, and yet we've been trying to have a couple hundred people work on it. You can't do it. So now we have to build it into our budget as a fixed cost monthly times the 7 buildings. We're now talking an increase of $20,000, $30,000 that wasn't there. So we're getting there, but we're not there yet in order to even really experiment to the point to see if this will work for us.
I'm just bringing it up
But I
because the
hear
numbers
you.
are starting to come in the right ratios.
Yeah, and many of the books are online, but not all of them yet. And so there's still this kind of transition period that we're in.
I'm just curious where you're at. Thank you.
Thank you.
And there's also a license fee for each book that you download. It's not just the cost of the tablet or whatever it is that you may use.
Just to build on what Rhonda was saying, you were discussing with the books and how frustrated parents are that their kids don't have a book and that you're using copy machines. I mean, I wouldn't, frustrated is being polite. I mean, they're incensed. To Mr. Slavin's point, might as well be in the third world. You know what I mean? If we can't put a book in every student's hands, put a fork in us, we're done. If nothing else, we need to get this. That's my point, my opinion.
Are there other places on this that you want to talk about?
Sure, if you want me to go through just the changes.
Yeah, any major changes that you want to explain, and then we'll just ask for
Well,
any
I do, we did cut back, we spent $9,000 on paper last year. I'm hoping with these new books, we can be in alignment with the $6,645. We also cut, at the very beginning, we cut one of our office accounts because we're hoping to use less ink in the general office supplies, because as your point that we're copying books, things of that nature, we're hoping to use less ink, less paper. Pretty much our building repairs and maintenance, I asked for more money, it went down. We've got an older building, there's more and more maintenance that needs to happen. We're just going to have to try and be creative and fix what needs to be fixed. There will not be any preventative maintenance because that account is now down, and our building is getting closer to 25 years of age at this point in time, and there's a lot of work that needs to happen year in and year out, different things that fail. We also, equipment repair, our equipment's getting older. There's a $2,000 cut there. As Dr. Rabinovich said, the business class internet, that's very exciting. We're working on getting that up to speed, and the wireless, we're starting to phase that in. We're pretty excited about our copier lease. I know it's only $1,639, but we were also able to get 2 more units in to hopefully decrease the wear and tear, and we also save money, so we're pretty excited about that. The OCED textbooks, this is obviously our business classes, our DECA students. There's $1,279 that needs to be reinstated. This gives them the opportunity to have the paperwork, the supplementation, the textbooks that they need to be competitive at both the state and national level, and that was cut last year. The last piece, we added $1,000 to athletic supplies, but we also cut almost $5,000 from athletic other, and we're going to have to come together and figure out a way to get some of that money back in, whether it be through increased user fees or whatever it may be. because that $56,000 is what it costs for us, for officials, for transportation, and other fees that are associated with athletics. So we're going to have to be creative. Hopefully we'll have some good gates from the winter season this year, and then be able to offset that. But that's something we're going to really have to look at and come up with a plan, because I do not want to go in front of the school committee and cut anything else. Our school is probably the only school in the district where students have an array of choices where they want to attend. Unless they're going to a private or a charter school, the elementary or middle school level, they don't have the vocational opportunities that students do at the secondary level. So I pride myself in offering as many activities after school as possible, whether it be clubs, activities, athletics, and I don't want to see us, again, going in front of the school committee and looking to cut extracurricular programs. So that's the budget in itself with the changes. Certainly entertain any questions you may have. Mr. Sweat?
You've got administration, secretaries, custodians, all sorts of people besides teachers. You ever think about cutting any of them?
Well, my predecessors really did a great job in really fine-tuning the budget and cutting those positions. We're pretty much to the bone custodian-wise. Our school runs around 18 hours a day, more than 5 days a week. So there's a huge need for the custodians. We're down to the lowest level of custodian support we've ever had. From a clerical standpoint, we're still not where we were 4 or 5 years ago. So, you know, we've made those cuts. That's the low-lying fruit that my predecessors took advantage of. We're to the bone in both those areas.
Administration?
Administration as well.
Everybody you have is more important than a teacher.
I don't think there's anything more important than a teacher.
But if it came down to that?
If it came down to that, we'd have to have a debate over what's more important, books or teachers.
No, I mean administration versus
I mean, if you look at where we were from an administration standpoint, you had 3 APs and a principal just a few years ago. Right now, I have 1 AP and myself.
Plus the deans.
Who teach.
40% of the time.
Correct.
Okay.
And if you add that up, it still doesn't equate to what we had a few years ago.
And you need every single one of them.
We've got some needs in that building that need to be addressed on a daily basis.
And the absence of them would cause?
I didn't want to think about what it would cause.
Okay.
They're out straight. Everyone is out straight right now. The teachers are out straight. They're all teaching an extra class. The administration is out straight. We've made some accommodations for the teachers because they're not doing duties now. And, you know, so there's a lot of things that we pick up that need to be taken care of by administration, that should be taken care of by administration.
Finally, you're competing for all those 8th graders.
Correct.
Does this budget allow you to effectively compete?
I believe if we have the textbooks, because we've been able to, you know, through that $16,000, be creative and try and find textbooks and find alternative resources for the other classes. I believe it allows us to compete at a very competitive level, because this is really, this has been the big issue for us. The math scores, you've been on the school committee long enough, you know where we're at with that. It's been an issue for us for many years, and without those textbooks, we can work as hard as we want, teachers can work as hard as they want. You need to have that alignment with the textbooks. So yes, it allows us to be competitive.
I have a question.
Sure.
First of all, how many children are in the high school right now?
In the high school right now, we have 632 students.
Okay. Your high school students were very successful.
Donna, can you turn the microphone?
Oh, yes,
please?
okay. Your high school students were extremely successful in getting your roof repaired,
Correct.
okay? They were able to do something that none of us were able to do. Why don't you use that resource as a debt exclusion for books, and just use books and technology, and we can market that? That's so much easier to market.
Can I interrupt on that one?
Please.
Yeah. The whole debt exclusion, I came on board with the school committee toward the end of that whole thing, but I supported them wholeheartedly. I'll never forget, we had that public meeting, and a parent came up and asked the superintendent, you know, why on earth did you put the textbooks in a debt exclusion? And his response was, lesson learned. I don't want to do that again. That's the second part's my
I think the issue I have is it's a gamble. This is a need. It's been a need for many years. It needs to be addressed. I'm not willing to roll the dice again. I mean, I lost a year of being able to spend $16,000. I know it doesn't seem like a lot, and when you're paying almost $100 a textbook, it's not. But you can fill some gaps. But certainly, the biggest issue we have, it's more than a gap, it's a huge hole.
Yeah.
And it is the math books that we do not have.
Right.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. Don't take it out of your budget too, but put it, I mean, you're so far behind in your books. You need whatever help you can get. And books are a lot, you know, go for the stars with the books if you have to. Is all I'm saying. If we have to do that, and we are in a place where we have to do that. The books are, I mean, wow. I can't even do a 5th grade math. You know, if I got to go up to the if
You had a good math teacher.
But, and let me just say that the books were actually passed at town meeting, so they weren't passed through debt exclusion. And I think that's the other concern, or the concern that, I won't speak for anybody else, the concern that I have, that yes, the students did a phenomenal job. Yes, they expressed the need better than any one of us did. But it was done in a room with 200 and something people, none at a vote. And that's where, should we keep doing debt exclusions every senior year for all the needs that we have? Sure. I mean, we can try many different things, but
we can bring it to town meeting, not even in a debt, bring it to town meeting. And when you get the students involved, then their parents might get out there and vote. And I really and truly believe the way you got that roof done, you should push to bring the books, because I think you're so far behind when it comes to the books and technology. You need more than what you're asking for. You do. And everybody, the scores, you know, you have everything to back it up. Use these kids and bring it to town meeting.
I hate to use kids, but I want to remind you, these kids took this upon themselves. They were not driven by any administration, staff. This was their doing, and I okayed it, but this was them doing that. I'm not sure if I feel comfortable trying to get some kids to push this agenda along.
With all due respect, I have the next principal who was
Okay.
out of her building waiting to speak. So if we have any particular questions on the budget, and may we please talk about strategy at the end, that would be helpful. Dr. Sylvian?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I've got this square in my head in terms of budgetary perspective.
Sure.
Okay. Chairman Sweat asked about the administration, and make sure I got this thing right. Before you came on as principal, there were 4 full-time administrators, is that correct?
Correct.
There was a principal, an assistant principal.
2 assistant
and
principals.
2 assistant principals and a dean.
Correct.
Okay? So that was 4 full-time administrators plus a full complement of department heads, is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Now, what you've done is, and correct me if I'm wrong now, you have taken that money that we were paying into administration and put in teaching deans, is that correct?
Correct.
And reduced the number of administrators to 2.
Correct.
Is that a budget neutral decision, or is it a budget savings decision? Just looking at the administrative salaries.
Well, it's a budget savings when you compare it to the 4 that you described.
That's what I meant.
Correct.
Okay. So, and then the other thing too is, all right, am I safe in assuming that having the teachers teach another class, that kept us from, well, it would have been 10 teachers. We added approximately 10 teachers to the high school by having the teachers teach another section.
That's correct.
Okay. So I am safe in
You're
making
very
that
safe.
assumption.
Very
Okay.
safe. And that also brought down our class size, which
And
was...
with all due respect to our Director of Special Education or Student Services, I think the world of him. You've got over 30 people at the high school dedicated to special education, between teachers and aides. That's a big chunk of people.
26.
Well, all right, ballpark.
Right.
Say
26.
between 25 and
26.
30 people dedicated specifically to special education.
Right.
That's a big chunk of people.
And we've got a high percentage of students on IEPs as well.
That's exactly right. So, you know, I think that we have to look at this, you know, with the right lens.
Sure.
You know, I'm doing a lot of work in the inner city, and we're talking about technology.
Sure.
and overrides will come before town meeting. You know, the bottom line is, we have an obligation as a community to provide the educational and the instructional materials that we need to do the job. Now, I'm talking about technology, books, whatever you want to say. We need instructional materials to do the job, and that's our obligation, to make sure that that gets done.
Correct.
And then lastly, one other thing. Here, I'm doing some, I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to. I'm doing some work in Randolph. Now, believe it or not, Randolph is a like community. The state groups communities, and Randolph is a like community to Wareham. Do you know that every single solitary student in that district has an iPod?
Pad.
Well, iPad. That's what I meant. That has an iPad.
APAD?
What, an iPad?
I
have iPad. No. So there's a like community, all right, that has the technology and recognizes the fact that an investment in the future of their children, all right, in terms of academic success, they put the technology in their hand in terms of instructional materials. I'll go one better. I'm doing work in Revere. Same scenario. So, putting the instructional materials in the hands of our kids is our obligation.
Right. And Randolph High School has more money in their technology budget for just the high school than we do as a district. My brother used to work there, so I'm pretty familiar with the town.
So, you know, and we're talking about like communities. We're not talking about, you know, Wellesley. We're
Right.
talking about like communities.
Right.
And they are recognizing the fact that the future of their community lies in the education they provide their children in a public setting. And you know what? It's our obligation to make sure that our kids have the instructional materials that they need. So I just want to make that point from a budgetary perspective. So your strategy is not only saved budgetary money,
correct,
okay, but by the same token, you're still not at the point you should be in terms of instructional materials.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom, you had a question for Principal Palladino?
I did. One point on doing this budget, it just seems to be that everything is approaching it with a scalpel. I'd like to see a what-if budget so that if you had another $600,000, where would you put it and what would be the reward from that? So we know what choices we're making.
The difficulty, and this is from my perspective, is that after multiple years of hitting my head on a concrete wall, of coming in and asking for what is needed and walking away with far less than that number, it's difficult for me to do the what if and say to you, okay, I need this 1,800,000 plus 600,000 would give us. Because at this point, we're trying to fight for every dollar above where we are now. Because without it, there will be serious cuts. The programs we have brought forward that we believe will help us have our students achieve better will disappear. That we will truly be second-class educational system. And that will, due to your and my property values, just what we think they will. But today's point is to try to show you that we have gone through this, that we're not asking for a Cadillac. We are asking for what we need. And to go with what Dr. Sylvia said before about like communities, unfortunately, the unlikeliness, Wareham is unique. It is unique because where we fall when it comes to the mean income of families versus the mean property value. We sit at number 40 in the state on property value when you average in all the communities because of the 150 homes worth $1 million plus that sit on the water, and because we have more coastline. And the way the state funds us is they have a 50-50 formula, which goes 50% on your property value and 50% on the mean income. They offset each other, so we get far less than a Randolph or other Taunton cities because we're seen as this rural retirement community, that it can afford more than what we fund, but we don't get it from the state. So it's a double whack to us.
Well, it isn't as if the state is loaded either. I mean, they've got significant problems.
No,
they're
but
facing.
they have passed legislation to give communities like Wellesley 17% of their Chapter 70 needs, and only give us up to 40%, rather than saying, this is a community that needs more, and Wellesley or Newton don't need it. That's the unfortunate part. But we're here trying to make the argument for what we need.
One of the points that I forgot to make is very, very important. I don't want anyone to lose sight of it. These new academic requirements being put in by the state of Massachusetts are going to necessitate increased personnel. Make no doubt about it. If you're going to go from 3 years of a required subject to 4 years of a required subject, at some point in time, either you're going to reduce significantly other programs that are not required, or you're going to have to add staff. So it's going to have budgetary implications.
Right. Sorry, Frank, go ahead.
Yeah, if I may, because I would like to answer Tom's question. What you're asking them to do is what they did, at least the 2 years prior that I came here and sat through these meetings.
Well, they can't
Last
give
year,
up.
last year the decision was made to put it out to the town and let them tell us what they wanted to do. So we told them, this is what we need and this is what you'll get, and they rejected it. That's why we sit here today with this approach to the budget. And I think we need to keep that in mind. I know we also have a principal who's trying to get in here and get back to the kids, so, but I want to make that perfectly clear to everybody that's sitting here again, and anybody that sees this film. This was put before the town, and the town rejected it.
Sam?
The only thing I'd add is rejected overwhelmingly. It wasn't like it was rejected by one vote.
Yes.
Since Dr. Rabinovich brought up property values, I have to ask the question while you're here. This budget, I assume, will allow you to maintain accreditation.
Right, which is,
Yes?
it will allow us to maintain, you probably remember the two biggest issues.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't even see that.
No, that's fine. I was going to end on that. The two biggest issues were technology, which we're moving forward and being very creative, and we have, I believe, $16,000, $18,000 in that account, and the textbooks, with two of the bigger issues that cost money that needed to be addressed. So we have received word that we have maintained accreditation. We'll have it for 10 years, but we still have a lot of recommendations that need to be addressed, so 10 years from now, it won't be an issue. So we have a lot of work to do.
You've got a 10-year window now?
Well, you've got reports that have to be done.
I was about to say.
There's reports that have to be done, and they want to see us adjusting or addressing the recommendations. We have a highlighted report that's due February 1st. We have a 2-year report that's due in October, and we have a 5-year report that's due after that. So,
is it fair to say that cuts from this budget would threaten your ability to give a report that would maintain? I thought you were on warning, or?
Correct.
Are you still on warning?
We will still be on warning for the 5 years, correct.
Okay.
But that has full accreditation.
I understand
and
that.
there's over 100 schools in the state that are on the same level as we are.
Okay, but a cut from this budget would not allow you to make progress on the recommendations and put you in a vulnerable position. Is that a fair statement?
It won't allow us to make progress, that's correct.
Which they demand in order to maintain your status.
Correct.
I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, but we're working, we're moving forward, and we're hopeful that with the textbooks and the improved technology that we can stay, maybe even move off a warning in that 5-year window.
Try to sell your house in a place that has a high school that's not accredited. It ain't going to happen.
But for the viewers at home, we have accreditation, and our expectation is that we will continue to have accreditation. So for those 8th grade parents that are home trying to make their decisions, we are accredited and will continue to be accredited.
Good point.
Right, but we need resources.
Just want to make sure about the soundbite.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Principal Palladino.
Thank you.
As they say in the game show business, come on down.
We don't have music though.
There's a balance between
Morning.
Morning.
Oh.
I agree. Good point.
This is Joan Siemens. Joan is the principal of the Minot Forest Elementary School. The school that we invited voters to participate in planning to renovate the 50-year-old facility that they determined not to participate in.
We're going to take running breaks, everybody. We're just going to keep working, and if you need to take a break, just take one.
When you go through those double doors, there are restrooms, straight ahead adult restrooms. And if you go down the stairs into the first room on your right, that is the staff room, and there are also restrooms there. And a Coke machine. There is coffee, please help yourself. There will be lunch served, because it may be a working lunch if we continue with that conversation. So, Joan.
Before we get to that, Dr. Rabinovich, can I
yes.
make a comment, though, about
Please.
the renovation of the school and what the impact of that $500,000 debt exclusion not passing was? The state this year took 280 applications from 128 communities for school renovations. Of that, they approved only 14. Our chances of getting back on that list again, I think in the next 5 to 10 years, are minimal.
And to further that statement, Frank, I can say to you that much political capital was wasted getting us accepted and on that list. Without that, you're absolutely correct. It will be a while before you will have to wait your turn now.
Just a point of clarification, are we applying again this year, or are we going to keep
No, we're
applying?
not. We are not applying this year. That window is closed, and as he said, they've already accepted the people for this. And in fact, my recommendation for the next group looking at this would be go to the town, get the vote first, and then go to town meeting.
I invite anybody to come for a tour of Minot Forest to see what we're living with now based on that vote not passing. As of Monday, I have to make some changes to the way parents drop off students because of some very significant safety issues and the backup on Minot Ave. So, anyway, good morning, everyone. I'm Joan Siemens, as Dr. Rabinovich had mentioned. So I'll go through our budget for Minot Forest.
And for those of you who are following in the larger documents, Minot Forest is bottom of page 4, and it goes through to the middle of page 6. And Jones facility costs $4,471,902 to run, just for a frame of reference.
So these next two slides, we have the accounts that I have at Minot Forest that, in these particular slides, does not include salaries. You have that in your main budget there. So I'll go through and then I have the justifications as to why there's an increase in various accounts. So the principal supply line item is staying the same amount from what we are currently operating this year to what we're asking for the fiscal year 14. Same thing with principal other. Computer supplies, I'm asking for $9,500. And is it easier, Dr. Rabinovich, to just have it look at, like, go to the justification page back and forth? Do you think?
You can talk about it. They don't need to go to that other page. You just
Okay, so I can,
say it
all
as
right.
you see it.
So for computer supplies, the computers that we have at Minot Forest are starting to break down right now. And we need to be able to replace the computers. We do have network printers, so we'll have 4 or 5 teachers that share one printer. And we have to continually buy the ink for those printers. We also have additional staff now that came over from Hammond. So by asking for $7,000, I'm hoping to at least start to purchase a few more computers each year to replace the ones that are starting to crash on us. they can't handle the technology that we're asking the teachers to do for the various Power School and things like that. So I think a few years back we had 15,000 in this account. We've gone through several revisions from when I originally started proposing this budget to now. So this is basically a bare minimum to ask for this amount of money.
The one thing that I'll add to that when it comes to power schools, and I don't know if you all have known this, but we've been talking about it for a couple of years now about expanding power schools into the elementary level. Power schools in the middle school and high school allow that parent access and that that connection between the parents and the education of their kids. So parents are able to go on, see how their child is doing, seeing if they have any homework, especially when you get into the high school years. It really does allow that access to the parents, and it's a way that the teachers can encourage parents to be part of the learning process. We haven't been able to roll that out into the elementary school, and that it would do so much. I mean, in our district, where you get the most parent involvement is in the elementary level, and that's where you really start capturing the parents to be part of the educational learning process. We're able to do that on different levels, but this is just a very, very important way that we can start that engagement very early on. So I've been a huge, huge fan of this. Just so you know, full disclosure, I have a child on the elementary level, and I know it's something that a lot of the parents in that school would benefit from. So I just wanted to let people know about Power Schools.
Thank you. When you look at textbooks, instructional supplies, because of the debt exclusion not passing, we didn't have money in this account this year. So we have gone through and, again, have revised these numbers. We're looking at various grants. We're working with Mrs. Rotella through what her office can provide grants for reading programs and what we need in our line item to purchase materials. And $88,769 may seem like a lot of money, but when you're looking at 675 children right now, just to give them what we currently need to maintain our programs. With the new Common Core standards, you may have heard that from previous presentations, we have new regulations that we must meet. We have to have 50% of our reading material has to be informational text. We were able to purchase some materials in reading this year for our K-2 students. Our grades 3 through 5 students don't have new material to support that. So again, we're trying to look through grants and everything for that and to see what we need to purchase. We have our everyday math program just to purchase what the students need are in these numbers. Writing program. So this is not a wish list. This is looking at exactly what we need to have. For math, K-5 right now, which is what we're planning for. This account also includes our AV, so if we need to order overhead projectors, that is included in this also. So to support our National Geographic pre-K from K-2, looking at what we need to support the teachers in reading, math, writing, science, and social studies. That is why there's an increase there of $88,769 from what we have this year. Our pencil and paper line item, we kept the same. The software license upgrades, we're adding in $1,200 for that. We have software licenses. We use Study Island and SumDog, so we have to be able to maintain those licenses. And the students really enjoy using those programs to support their math. We know when we're looking at our math scores that they went down this previous year for MCAS. SumDog is a competition. We were able to compete with other students across the state last year, and one of our second grade teachers, Mrs. Roberts, had the top student in that competition. So the children like using math games. It's fun for them and they're learning. So we're keeping with that. The instructional other, I just took exact numbers. That's not putting anything in, so just the difference between last year and this year, there's actually a decrease of $1,600 there. Would I like to have additional money in that account for other instructional things that we could use? Absolutely. But we're being realistic. Network other is an additional $1,000. We're purchasing 6 of 12 switches and installing 8 of 30 wireless access points. And that's something I'm not sure if you're talking about Mr. Lozanne, but I know he's spearheading that project to have more wireless access at Minot Forest, because we only have like one hotspot in the building that we could connect to. So we need to increase that. So we're starting to phase that in. So that additional 1,000 there will help to phase this in. And we have it in 3 phases, so it will be done over 3 years. Contracted services is that's a new account. Got that, let me think. That's only a $704 increase, just to maintain what we have right now. If you look at the next slide, custodial supplies is an increase of $2,500. With additional 119 students, we go through a lot more toilet paper, tissue paper, paper towels, and so forth. And that particular account last year was in a deficit. So I've included some extra funds there for that. Building maintenance. This was one of the items that we really need to address to that debt exclusion, the renovation project. So we have some repairs that have to be taken care of right away. That's included in that $43,000 increase. I can't just have $25,000 that we had for this past year. We go through that quickly. So these are repairs above and beyond what we normally do to maintain our building. In the portable classrooms, we had new leaks this year. When Hurricane Sandy came in, we found more water came in through that we have to have repairs. Gym number 2, which is now used for reading interventionists instead of a gymnasium, has water that comes through the bottom of the doorways. If you come in through the side entrance to gym number 1, if you know, our JBA, we have water that's pouring in through those doorways that's kind of seeping through the groundway. So we have to be able to repair that. More leaks that come in through gym 1 through the foundation. We also, in the front of the building, the windows are single pane, and we had numerous leaks that happened from Hurricane Sandy, and these are all new leaks that we haven't had in the past. The rubber molding around the windows blew off, so the rain just poured in through the windows. And this actually was around Thanksgiving because the kindergarten children had made placemats and they were ruined. They had to try to redo those for the grandparent celebration. So several of the windows are now leaking with heavy rain that comes through. So my custodian has gone through to take some of the pictures of what we're now facing with that. The plastic is about to be lowered on my windows because of the cold to try to keep it warm in there. Maintenance of equipment repair. If we can take care of those repairs with the $43,000, we're hoping we won't have too many breakdowns. That's not a whole lot of money to run a building of our size and our age, $8,965. The copier Rizzo account is up $2,200 due to the maintenance contract. That's just straight numbers. As the machine gets older, the maintenance increases. The business class internet, again, is additional work we're doing, adding the internet into the building. There's a cost that's involved with that. Field trip, that remains the same. I only use that account for the music and band program. They practice once. For the band concert, they go to the high school one time to practice. We only allow them to practice once instead of twice. They have 2 concerts, but we only afford to have them go once. Computer maintenance, again, is a new account. It's allowing us to purchase and install 11 of 30 wireless access points. So again, this is more of the phasing in that we are doing. The next slides basically are what I just went through, all the justifications for those increases. So staffing. With the override that did not pass and the layoffs that we have, I am down 4 classroom teachers this year and down 1 custodial position. I'm also down 1 assistant principal position. I did have 2. We cut 1 from the budget last year. So I have 1 assistant principal at Minot Forest. We're dealing with 675 children. And, sorry, just getting to the right one. So we're looking at what we need for staffing. The numbers that you'll see in my projection only includes 1 teacher addition, I'll be asking for 3 additional classroom teachers, and you'll see in the numbers why. I'd like to have 2 part-time math interventionists to work with students on math deficiencies. Again, this is to support the fact that our MCAS scores have gone down. We see this as a need. We used to have this a few years ago, staff that could help during an intervention block on math. We eliminated that when we had to start eliminating items from the budget. So 2 part-time people is the bare minimum, I guess. Obviously, I'd love to see more, but if we could have 2, it's approximately $40,000. Yes, Mr. Flaherty.
To clarify, are you saying that basically you were doing RTI before we called it RTI?
Yes.
Okay. And that
Yeah, we always had intervention time. It used to be literacy and math, and then we just started focusing on the literacy when we started the formal RTI process.
Thank you.
Yep. We would like to have the math consultant continue to work with the teachers on the math alignment, the benchmark assessments that we do, and coaching of the teachers. So I've put in for $10,000 for this consultant to continue. I'm sure Deacon's has done the same so that we can have consistency throughout the district. We currently have a person doing that. She's retiring. We would love to keep her on board, so we would like to plan for that. And we have found this to be a deficiency when we didn't have that. We had math coaches a few years ago, and we saw an increase in our math scores. When we eliminated that and we went to a different model, we started to see a drop in our scores. So the math consultant is not only there for the students, but can help support the teachers as we go through the everyday math. As a teacher started to focus so much on mastery, she got a little behind. That math coach was able to work with that teacher and bring it back up to speed. So we are feeling the loss of not having a math coach this year. So by having the math consultant that we started this to bring back this year, that's going to help us. I'd like to see a technology teacher. Currently, I have a technology assistant. It's a paraprofessional. It is not a teaching position. She's there to assist the classroom teachers who bring the teachers to the computer lab. She's there if we have some minor computer issues. The position serves multiple purposes. It would allow our current teacher assistant, the paraprofessional, to then become a building assistant. This is important because we have so many meetings during the day. We have special education team meetings. At a team meeting, the classroom teacher must be at that meeting. So she needs to leave her classroom to go to the meeting, and we try to have them at first thing in the morning, but of course they spill over into the school day. We try to have them at the end of the day, but we have to start before the end of the school day. We have to have that teacher's classroom covered. We're pulling our current paraprofessionals from our substantially separate programs and our tech assistant to cover this class. I'm concerned with the amount of time we're pulling from our substantially separate classrooms because those children need to have those paras there. So if I can convert the tech assistant into a building assistant, we can use that person to cover the meetings that we have. The technology teacher also can service the children with the new technology that we would like to get, the current needs that we have, and that could be a time for the teachers to have what we call their prep time, their contractual time. If I want to meet with the teachers for collaboration, they all have the same common planning time. Right now, by contract, I can't meet with them. I can't pull them together. They could volunteer to come, but I can't mandate that. But if I wanted to meet with them to go over their math scores or to talk about their Dibbles assessment, I could pull them together for that time, and the time with the technology teacher could be used to make up the prep that they miss. So it's a way of getting us collaboration time. It's a way of having a technology teacher that can work with students on the various websites and computer, giving them more time to use on the computer lab. If Minot Forest continues to have the K-5 grouping, which that's coming up soon, we feel we need an adjustment counselor to help address the increase in discipline. I'm not asking to have the assistant principal position restored. I'm asking for an adjustment counselor. I do have a guidance counselor right now, but with such a significant increase in discipline for some very critical needs of our students, we need someone that can address the behaviors. Right now, the assistant principal and I work, we get called to the classroom, we go in, we try to calm the child down. But that's just a temporary solution. We really need to work on the focus of the behavior and what is happening with that child, or there could be groups of children having the same issue. So if we can, if we stay at K-5, we feel that this position is needed for support.
And you did lose an assistant principal this year, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah.
When we closed Hammond, I lost
Right.
Mrs. Ames.
But there was
a second building.
I
Right,
still
but
have the
those-
same number of
those
students,
kids-
but I have,
Yeah. But those kids are now in Minot.
right, so now I have all the children at Minot Forest.
But only one building.
One building, but the same number of students. I'm asking for 2 breakfast monitors. It seems like a small amount of money, but we are servicing about 275 children every morning for breakfast. There's such a small window of time from when they come off the bus at 8:25 in the morning. Instruction begins at 8:35. That's 10 minutes. It's not enough time to get off the bus, go to the cafeteria, grab their breakfast, and eat in 10 minutes. They can't even get to the cafeteria in that amount of time. So our instruction is delayed because they're eating breakfast at school. Yes.
I had more time than that in boot camp.
Right, so they're eating breakfast while the teachers are trying to start instruction. We have 4 registers going now in the morning to try to help with the flow of the lines. It's such an increase this year, because we've had an increase in free and reduced lunch because of the economy, and because we have 119 more students as well. The breakfast monitors could start early, let's say from 8 to 9 o'clock. We have buses that arrive before 8:25. We can pull those students off the buses that need to go to breakfast. They can get their breakfast. We have families that start dropping off at 8, 10 in the morning. We can start servicing those children. That would cut down on the huge crush of time in the amount of students in the line. Because the teachers are concerned it's cutting into their math time when they're eating breakfast and they have to clean up. So it is a valid concern. And with the breakfast monitors there, someone's on duty, so parents can start dropping off at 8:10 instead of 8:25. Administrators, and this is the technology one, as I mentioned, meeting with the teachers for collaboration. I would like to see 3 new teaching positions for class size. I have that chart. Our numbers include 1 for now, but you'll see why I really feel that we need to have 3. Again, I've lost 4 teaching positions due to budget cuts this past year.
Joan,
Yes.
if you have those 3 additional teachers, do you have the space at Minot?
No, I do not, and that's, because I don't have space to add 3 new teachers, there's discussions about moving the grade 5 to the middle school. There is a public hearing about that in January, the school committee meeting.
Yes.
Just out of curiosity, I understand this budget is based on 675 students.
Yes.
And what was it last year? What was the previous figure?
It was a little less, not by much, by like 20 or 25 students. But last year I had 3 buildings. I had preschool as well, that is now run by the coordinator. But these kindergarten students were at Hammond. So when you look at
How many do you have this year?
I have a high kindergarten class this year.
No, the total students.
675 this year, and I think we were at 633 2 years ago.
Let me try to answer, I think, the question that's being asked. It's difficult to make an apples-to-apples comparison in this particular account because we had the Hammond School last year where the kindergarten children were located. We've taken those kindergarten children and moved them into the Minot Forest School. So she's responsible for the same number of children, but it's all in one building. And budget-wise, it's all in this budget. So you'd have to go back to Hammond last year and subtract that number from this to make it an apples-to-apples. Does that answer the question that you're asking?
Doesn't answer it, but it explains it.
All right. I mean, I didn't think maybe during the break we can actually do the mathematics of it.
So the chart that you see on the screen, I've kind of broke it into 2. On the left-hand side, if we had the 3 additional teachers I'm looking for. Right now in grade 1, I reduced classes from 6 to 4. That's 2 of the positions I lost last year. So I'm projecting 119 students. That's taking straight numbers from what I have in kindergarten right now, going into grade 1. If I have the 4 classes now, we're at 30 per classroom, which is, you can't do that in first grade. If I add another classroom, we can bring it to 23, 24. 6 classes brings it to 19, 20. I'd have to add 2 positions to that. Grade 2, I currently have 5 classes. With 90 students, you're at 18. If they go down to 4 classes, they're at 22, 23. We could do that, so I could take one of those positions and move them to grade 2, which is why if I needed 2 positions, I can move one from grade 2. Grade 3 would be 111 students. We currently have 5 classes. They'd be at 22, 23, which is what I'd like to keep. If they go down to 4 classes, they're at 27, 28. That's pretty high when you're starting with MCAS. Grade 4, this is my bubble class. There's 130 students. It's my high class this year, and every time a family moved in this past summer, it was grade 3. So that class even went higher from what I had, Murphy's Law. So I used to have 5 teachers in this grade level. We currently have 4. If we kept the 4, 32, 33 students in the class does not work. If they go to 5 classes, they're at 26. That's still high. 6 classes brings us at 21, 22 students. I would need 2 positions here. Grade 5, we have 4 classes this year. I had 5 last year. If we keep them at the 4 with 98 students projected, they're at 24, 25. If they went to 5 classes, it's 19, 20. But when you look at the other grade levels, the equity is not there, so I would keep it at the 4. If I don't get those 3 positions, what does that look like? For grade 1, I have to have a position there because I can't have 29, 30 students there. I would move a grade 2 teacher to grade 1. So grade 1 would then have 23, 24 students. Grade 2 drops down to 4 classes. They're at 22, 23. Grade 3, if I drop them down to 4 classes, they're at 27, 28. That is high. Grade 4, I have to have a teacher there for 5 classes. They're at 26. That's still high. I'll keep the same at 4 classes at grade 5. I need at least 1 teacher to put in that grade 3 so I don't take one away to move it to grade 4. If I don't get at least 1 teacher, grade 3 has to have 4 classes at 27, 28. And grade 4, if I take it away from the grade 3, they would be at 26. So the numbers you see in the middle are the numbers that would be projected. And if I had 26 absolutely perfect, well-behaved darlings sitting in front of the teacher, this would not be an issue. But this is not what in reality, this is not what we have. We do a great work with mainstreaming all of our students and working with all of our students and all of their special needs. And it's just not feasible at the elementary level. As I said, I've already lost 4 positions, and we need to restore that just based on these numbers.
And Joan, just to answer the question that was asked before, if we looked at fiscal 2012, the bottom line for Minot Forest, which was $3,604,212, and we add to it what was in fiscal 12 from the Hammond School, which was $918,228, the number comes out to $4,522,440. We then cut a number of teachers from her staff, and that's why it went down to the $3,979,000, and now it's going up to the $4,004,000. But that's why the increases is because of the additional staff and so forth that came back from Hammond.
So overcrowding at Minot, yes.
Just for everybody's edification, not that I usually feel capable of doing that on education issues, but when I first got on the school committee, one of the things that was a hot button for me is this class size issue. So I did a lot of research trying to figure out whether there was any real data that said, you know, a certain level of class size was going to be detrimental to education. It turns out, somewhat surprising to me, that when you get into middle and high school, it doesn't seem to make that much difference. The only compelling data actually was in the elementary schools, especially third grade and lower. There, it was pretty compelling that if you've got more than 19, if you're up in the low 20s, you're doing harm to the education of these kids. So I think we need to be particularly sensitive to these numbers. When I see numbers above 25, it gets to what Rhonda was talking about. We're just, and everybody else, I suppose, we're just not doing a job. It's the second-class education that Barry was talking about. So I think we need to be really sensitive when you hear Joan and Christine Panarisi talking later about class sizes, because the data says we're failing our children when we allow these numbers to exist.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
And in these classes, grades 1 through 5, there's no teacher assistant that's there to help the teachers. I mean, we had those years ago, especially in our special education inclusion classrooms. We don't have those now. So overcrowding at Minot Forest, which we were hoping the renovation and the expansion would help us with, but since that's not going to happen right now, I don't have any additional classroom space to put the extra teachers, even one extra teacher, which is why we have to have the discussion to move grade 5 to the middle school. I have 3 specialists on carts: art, music, and study skills. So they're pushing a cart through the hallway. Come to Minot Forest at lunchtime and see the 5th graders trying to get to lunch as the carts are trying to make a beeline for the elevator to see who can get there first to get downstairs. It is safe, but they make a joke of it. So with the 3 specialists on the cart, they have a difficult time navigating through the hallways to get to their class on time. Time on learning, we're trying to make sure we don't lose time. The 1 elevator delays them from getting up and down. We have 1 gymnasium now that we use for physical education. 1 gymnasium I had to take away, which is now used by our reading interventionists to work with the students. When we closed Hammond and I had to bring over 6 classes, I lost a lot of classroom space. So the reading interventionists no longer had a space, so I had to convert the gym for that. And they're working with students in there who are at risk for their reading, providing them additional time. In the portable classrooms at 20 years old, they need to be retired. We have to keep pouring money into them with all these leaks, as I mentioned earlier.
Joan, or somebody can answer this question, what is the average life cycle of a portable?
10 years, I
10
believe.
years.
I believe they were
If you're
hand-me-down, and I inherited them after they already were past their lifespan.
7 to 10.
These are just some pictures. This is the gymnasium where the reading interventionists are. We have 5 people in this area. They've tried to section off the areas with bookcases and their desks and so forth. At the beginning of the year, we had an issue with mold that we had to take care of. We had to totally seal off that gym. They corrected the issue. There's an issue of lighting in the gym. We had to buy floor lamps in order to increase the lighting that we see there. We have to increase the ventilation in there. We've had to buy some fans to keep the air circulating, which helps the mold situation. And then heating that all day, always is an issue. Another shot of how it looks in there.
They've done a nice job with what they have.
Oh, absolutely. My teachers are amazing. They came in, I practically moved the entire building this summer. With having the kindergarten come over, maybe all but 3 teachers had to move their classroom, pack up and move. So I have to thank them for doing that on their own time. And then the interventionists came in and we made the best of it. And we just finally got them internet service, thanks to Mr. Lozanne and his work, so that the students can now get on those computers to use Lexia to help with their reading strategies.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yes,
Is each student station wired for technology right now?
it is now.
In the gym?
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
We lost several months, but it is now.
Thank
Do
you.
they get to play basketball in between? Sorry.
No.
Wirelessly.
This is the art office. Again, the art teacher's on a cot. I at least had to give a space for all her supplies and things. I did move the music teacher in there at the beginning of the year when we lost the music room. It was too crowded for them. So the music teacher now has a little corner that you'll see on right there on the stage that we use for lunch. So she has a little niche there. This is an example of one of the classrooms. This is a third grade classroom, which we're at like the 27 levels. So between all of the desks that you have and the furniture, there really isn't much room to move. And I am constantly walking through those classrooms to make sure we're not blocking any access. Always have that fire code regulations in my mind to make sure we can move through those classrooms. The grade 5 that has 28 in a class, that can be challenging. And that's the end of Minot.
Any questions for Joan about her budget?
Yes, Dr. Sylvia.
Only because I'm not on the subcommittee, so, you know, I'm sure that this has already been discussed, but in terms of, I had several questions. Number one is you need the tech teacher to cover the 504s. I'm really of a strong believer, and I know that I've had conversations.
Not the tech teacher.
All right, the tech
assistant,
support.
to then become
right.
a building assistant.
Right. That's what I meant, but what I want to know is, are we really staying on top of 504 development?
Yes.
Because, you know, we really can't put everybody on a 504 that has a
Right.
situation, you know, because unless a life function is being impaired, they shouldn't have a 504.
Right, we don't have excessive
Okay.
numbers.
Could I interrupt for a second? For those of us who are not
What
in
is
the
a
school
504?
committee and not professionals within the
Individuals with
building.
Disability Act,
It
okay? If
is
they
a-
have a disability, they're
What
entitled
is
to
a
support.
TAC?
It is a federal regulation.
Right.
Okay.
Rather than special education, which is a state regulation.
Okay.
So, somebody that may have,
ADD.
well,
Cerebral
cerebral palsy.
But they don't have an education.
So they don't have an educational plan because they don't have limitations to the way they learn, but they do have limitations to the way how they get from place A to B
Correct.
to C, would have a 504, which may include somebody to push their wheelchair between places and help toileting and so forth, so.
And what's a TAC?
That's the
Teacher
Teacher
Assistance
Assistant Council.
Okay, thank you.
That's a support for the teachers. If they need some strategies for students, they think they've tried everything and they're still having some issues with students, it's a group of teachers that meet, administrators, and we try to suggest additional strategies for the teacher to
And the
try.
coverage is for those meetings. Okay.
So-
The educational
we're just trying
process
to
loves
understand.
their acronyms, so
I-
please keep
yes, I know.
asking these
I'm-
questions.
But
Totally
before,
familiar with that.
just for a second, so we don't just immediately say, all right, we're going to put this strategy in. We have this meeting, we have a formalized process where parents are part of a team meeting to decide what is needed, and then there's a lot of push back and forth about what services will be given as part of that 504. Because once you have it, since it's covered by federal regulations, it has penalties if you do not implement
Right.
what you have written into the plan.
Okay.
And a 504 will go all the way through your college education.
Thank you, Dr. Silva, for allowing me to
Not a
interrupt.
problem.
and
Certainly,
Become
Steve.
educated.
I just got a couple of really, really cool questions. In your opinion, do you have the capacity to implement the full teacher evaluation system?
No.
No?
If we have cuts next year, no. Are
With
we-
what you have in the budget
Oh,
now?
what we have now. We're maintaining, we have a high caseload. We have like 17, 18 teachers for each of us to do. That's the 2 instructional leaders we have that are only doing it part-time. The assistant principal, who every time he tries to do a walk through a classroom, he's being called out because of a discipline issue.
Absolutely.
And I have to walk through every teacher's classroom.
See, that's my main concern about the new evaluation system. I've been saying it all along. I really don't think as a district we've got the capacity to fully implement it and implement it the way it should be done. But that's another story for another time. Where are you going to get these part-time math
We will advertise and get quality people.
for part-time?
Yes.
Yes,
Really?
because they're retiring from the
Oh,
job
like
now.
old
of our-
fungies like me. I got it.
Or all the
Forget
school
it.
districts that lay off people because of budget, we can scoop them up.
Okay.
Within the conflict of interest, though, because.
When
they
the
wouldn't
students
be able
arrive
to
early on
hire
the
a
bus, what do they
school
do now if they don't go to breakfast?
Well, they sit on the bus until 8:25, they get off the bus, they go to their classroom.
Okay.
We don't have the staffing to get them off the
So
bus early now.
what time does the bus get, what does the earliest bus get there?
It could be there 8:20.
Okay, so they're not there more than 5 minutes or so, sitting on a bus.
On a day, it varies day to day,
Yeah, because
depending
I
what
was
happens at the
there-
middle school and.
Yeah, I was-
That's important to me. I don't want the kids sitting on a bus for 3,
Right.
15, 20
No,
minutes.
the timing is pretty good, but it's like
Okay.
5 to 7 minutes sometimes.
Your photographs in your presentation are very telling. From an education perspective, from my perspective, they're absolutely disgusting.
I know Mr. Flaherty came for a tour.
And I think it's remarkable that we're getting the services from the interventionists and from the specialists that we're getting. But the situation, you might as well just throw a bunch of chairs and desks in a barn and call it a classroom. We need to be serious about laying out a plan for Minot Forest School in terms of construction.
Oh, I agree. We can't.
We can't.
maintain
We
that.
got to get back on the list. We got to get it back on the ballot. We've got to inform the public as how bad it is over there, because I don't think anyone has a clue how bad it is over there. You know, you take a look at that classroom. I mean, not only is that classroom overcrowded, to be honest with you, it's unsafe and it's unhealthy. And we really got to get serious about doing something about Minot Forest, because we just can't continue like this. This is insane. Now, I know we might get some relief if we get rid of grade 5, but it doesn't fix the basic problem that the infrastructure of Minot Forest is falling down around our heads.
Now, when you say relief, you know, it will allow me to have additional classroom teachers. Even if I don't get additional classroom teachers, I would still like to see grade 5 go to the middle school because of the 3 specialists on a cart, the reading interventionist in the gym. I need to work on those issues.
Absolutely.
We still will not have enough space, even if we send the 4 classes to the middle school.
We have really, as a committee, have got to get serious and put Minot Forest as a top priority. And we as a town have an obligation to take care of our buildings. And that building just needs a lot of work. And we cannot not put forth an effort. Now, it may go down in flames again if it gets into a debt exclusion. But the point is, we've got to get back on that list. We've got to get it out there for the people to vote on this. And we've got to educate the people on how bad it really is.
Right.
It's leaking. The heating system is not capable of handling it. The portables, you might just scrap those, bring them to the dump right now. So I just think that we as a committee have an obligation to get that thing rolling again. Thank you.
Mr. Sweat?
I realize you only have your own percentage of this, but I'd like to talk about substitute teachers. I noticed we spend over $400,000 a year on substitute teachers as a district. And our superintendent has asked for an additional
30 grand.
30,000 on top of what we spent or projected to spend this year. My question is, there are a number of questions, but first of all, if I look at Minot Forest for the substitute line, it literally is only $43,500, and that's for substitute teachers / nurses. Well, is that literally all you spend on substitute teachers and nurses for an entire year?
I think this account in the past has gone into deficit. And in the past couple of years, I've had some staff members with some pretty significant medical issues where they've been out for a period of time, maternity leave. That all adds up into it.
I understand that. I just want to understand that $43,500. Maybe the superintendent can address that, because that's only 10% of the total.
We also did a lot of professional development last year that we have cut back on a little bit.
There are 2 separate line items. There's also the full-day kindergarten substitute teachers, which is its own line item now, rather than being contained, and that's an accounting practice for DESI that we need to separate out. So full-day kindergarten is $4,875 for substitute teachers. And we've also created one for professional development for the same reason. There's a certain amount of...
But there's nothing in there. That's zero.
Well, that's because I cut it. There were money there.
I'm always monitoring attendance of teachers. I question teachers if I see that numbers are getting high.
Oh, I see those reports, and the absenteeism of teachers is actually not out of line, at least from
Right.
what I've seen, especially if you
Especially if they have
include.
young children, most of their absences are because their children are sick.
But we still, as a district, and I know you're not responsible for the whole district, are spending over 400,000 on that. When you think about the uses of, and the second question I had, you list on the org chart 2 permanent intermittent subs.
Yes.
Are those, which line item are those in?
It's in the regular substitute line item.
That's in the substitute
Yes,
line
it is.
item. So is that the entire 43,500?
No, I mean,
How much does a permanent intermittent sub cost us?
$75 a day instead of $65 a day for everyday sub.
But it's in the 43,500.
Yes.
Okay, so when you think of all the uses of substitute teachers, how much of it, what percentage is because of a teacher is absent due to personal illness or whatever, or versus being called away for professional development meetings, et cetera, et cetera? Can you break that down in approximately?
I think I'd have to say maybe 75% is due to illness or medical. We do have paraprofessionals that we have to pay now if they take over for a teacher that goes to a meeting.
Joan, if I can stop you,
Yeah.
I would prefer that particular line of questioning be frozen at this point, and we will give you a report on that at another time.
Okay.
Because I, off the top of her head,
Right.
I don't think there's an adequate way of answering it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Flaherty?
I'm just looking at your old chat for Minot, and it doesn't. I don't think it separates the interventionists. Like, how many do you have now?
What are you looking at?
Well, this is the big one. You might not even.
My
have it.
organizational chart?
Yeah, this is the one for the district, though. And under you, it's got maybe the superintendent can answer.
I don't have that.
Under mine, it's
She has 4, actually 6 half-time interventionists.
And she's asking.
So that's 0.3, FTEs.
And two of those part-time are the instructional leaders.
Right, but it's 0.5 of its
Yes.
interventionists.
And they're working on reading only.
0.30 interventionists, FTE.
And you're looking to get 2 more halftime
For math.
for math, yeah. Okay,
Tom?
thank you.
Are there any Hammond costs in your budget?
No.
What's happening to Hammond School?
Hammond School, I believe, will be where, what is now housed at the Everett Educational Center, which is our curriculum office and our student services office, will be moving there because of leaks from the roof at Everett Center that we don't have the money to fix.
Frank, who's responsible for the maintenance of these buildings? Is it the?
We are.
We keep track of it. I just had to sign a PO for a leak, so.
It does, to answer, I think where you want to go, Tom, is it does reach a point where major repairs, et cetera, are the responsibility of the town. Once it hits that capital classification of $50,000, all right, there's no reason for it to come out of the school budget. It should be coming from the town. The problem is right about now, they got so many small items, if you put them all together, you could hit that amount, but the average, maintenance is overwhelming at this point.
Both Deacon's and Minot are both approaching 50 years old. And, they have the issues of an older building, just like an older house.
Both elementary schools needed the renovation. It's just we were only allowed to submit one application.
Right.
I could also say it would be like, the school's almost reaching the point that the library did, where there were so many small things eventually came to replacing windows and everything, and it became a major item. And I think that's where the money's going, but the problem is.
We're already there.
We don't go around and assess the building and its status and what it will need over the next.
And its
5,
usage
10
is
years.
full-time for young children. There's a big difference as well. It needs to be addressed far quicker than if you're dealing with something that has to do with adults and teenagers and stuff.
And we're obviously just patching, just patch on.
I don't think we're even patching well.
I don't think so either.
We're
We're
trying.
trying to prioritize the patches.
The other one point that surprises me is, again, you have 675 children. The high school only has 665. The middle school has 632. I mean, she's got the largest amount of children.
Well,
in this small
Deacon's
village.
is right up there,
Are they up
right?
there too?
Yeah. we're
In fact,
pretty
I think they may have a few more children.
Well,
So all four, we have 4 large facilities that have the bulk of our students.
yeah.
Derek?
To get back to the Everett School, you tried, or the Everett Building, you tried, let's call it a progressive manner, to use community preservation funds to repair it since it's a historic building.
That is correct. In fact, we asked to do a study of the Everett Center, which would have told us what we needed to do with the roof and with that old foundation as far as drainage, so that we could make it a watertight building. Unfortunately, that failed at town meeting, so that wasn't done. We also, to answer the question, went out and we had somebody from capital planning was on it. We did a study to bring in an architect that would have done a buildings and space needs study for us, to exactly do what you just asked, to lay out for us what needs to be fixed first to keep everything up to date and so forth. Unfortunately, the price tag was about $40,000 to do it, and the board at the time felt that we needed to use that money to bring back teachers and other things rather than using it for that purpose. So we had that, we went through the whole process, and it was ready to be awarded, but we moved back from it because of economics.
But each one of the principals do come forward with their capital needs. But again, you're talking about from a non-construction person. So they're coming forward and saying, this is visually what I see and what needs to be done, and here's my priority list. But
Right.
being able to do it in a, I would say, cost-effective way would cost us $40,000 to do that.
It's too bad you couldn't have a facilities manager for your entire school system. That's what you need.
We had one,
Well-
he died.
Let's not forget that we have a capital planning committee that has a list. The number of millions escapes me. Of
80.
80?
It was 90.
Yeah, okay.
We took a bunch of things out. I should say they have recently, Frank Nelson, taken a bunch of things out that just aren't gonna happen. Obviously, the Minot School and Tika School got off the list, which was a large number, but they're still down around 45, 50 million.
45, 50 million, only a small fraction of that gets addressed on a,
And there is zero capital expenditures coming through.
right.
Since fiscal 2000, which is approximately the last 12 years, we have been reducing our footprint. So we had a director of fields and grounds. We had a department of 4 people. We now have a working foreman with 1 other laborer who is out there plowing, lining fields, cutting lawns, and so forth. We had a director of food service. That person retired. The secretary who worked for her took over the department. We had, both elementary schools had 2 assistant principals. Now they both only have 1. So systematically, we had a director of technology, also reduced. So all of us are wearing more than 1 hat, doing the best that we can do with what we have. And at the same time, the town has also undergone things. I used to be able to go to the purchasing agent and say, would you bid this out for me? That roof was done through the school department and with the help of Derek. But without a purchasing agent, without somebody making sure all the dots are dotted and T's crossed, because again, the town needed to scale down what it had. So this is on both sides, that we are at a point where we all are doing as much as we can do, and sometimes you have to spend some money in order to do it the right way.
Absolutely.
And that's not where we are right now.
To not have a facilities manager for all your buildings, and to have a superintendent of schools screening roof consultants is ludicrous. That's not your expertise. Your expertise is educating the children, and it's fault you're not getting the time to do it. And the town just, I mean, I can't believe there's no person that's in charge of all your facilities and does all your bidding and does all this. It's ludicrous.
It really goes one step beyond that. The problem really is that the town as a whole just doesn't want to recognize the need, or doesn't feel they have the ability to do it, or whatever you want to say, but nobody's willing to step up and say, we're going to sacrifice this for that, or whatever. It's not happening. So Frank used the term a lot, everybody has kicked the can down the road, which is, you hear it all the time. Our federal government's no better than the last couple of days. Same thing. The bottom line is that you can have everything in place, you can have a great list of what has to be done on a yearly basis. If you don't have any dollars in front of that, it doesn't matter. And I feel bad, basically feel like the minor school, Deacon School, they're working on facilities that are wholly inadequate, and there's no future for them as they look forward. There's no relief, and therefore it's like a downward spiral. So it's going to take a whole mindset of the town has to change.
Absolutely.
Because if not, it's just, this is wonderful to do, but we won't get any action at the bottom end.
And that's kind of where I was, to build on that, you know, in terms about getting serious. I'm using mine as an example, but as you identify, we're going to need to both elementary schools. But we're going to get serious as a town. All of us have got to get serious about it. And we all got to jump on at the same time and paddle in the same direction. Because, you know, I think that we've reached a point now where it can't be them and us. It's got to be us together in terms of recognizing the needs that we have. And that was the point that I was trying to make. We've really got to get serious about a town in taking care of these school buildings that are literally falling apart. And when I see this photograph, that you've got unhealthy, unsafe conditions for our children.
We had families that pulled their children out after the override and the debt exclusion failed.
Christine.
Because they were concerned about the class size going up, the buildings not being taken care of. So when you have families that want to move in and they look at a school system, I have current families that have left us.
And the only thing I'll say about that is that these are the parents that we don't want leaving. These are the ones that have been engaged all along the way.
Absolutely.
Have advocated, are the volunteers in our school, all of that. They are the
They
ones
care
that
enough to pull their kids out.
Yes.
When you say that you've had parents who pulled their kids out, could you put a number on that? Was that 1 or 2, or was it substantial?
About at least 10 this past summer.
Thank you.
Applications to the Upper Cape was increased 58.
I believe 80 students went to Upper Cape this year. So it's a higher percentage than ever before.
And I am told that about 90% of them are on the honor roll.
$250,000 higher to the town.
Excuse me?
Our cost to the town will be over $250,000 more.
Yes, and
with that increase alone.
Yes, there's a $275,000 increase that we're told will be necessary.
To cover.
That's more than 10% above their current budget. Some percentage of that is more students, obviously. Some percentage of that is simply cost per student is rising. But the net impact is still $275,000, and as Cliff just said, a significant percentage of the people who are leaving due to school choice or voc tech are honor roll students.
90% are on the honor roll. 90% of those 8th graders, from the figures I got, were on the honor roll.
But the issue is even larger than what Alan was referring to. But since we can't keep the next principal waiting, I think we should thank John.
I know, she's been waiting out there a
Thank you,
while,
John.
so Thank you very much, everybody.
Christine, come on down.
And while she's coming up, just to that point, we're gonna get updated numbers this month, right, on the private school children that have left.
Yeah, I'm not sure Michelle is, but yeah.
I think that's fairly consistent, though.
Okay, we're ready for more good news.
I'd like to introduce Christine Panarisi.
Good morning.
And Christine is the principal of the John W. Deacus Elementary School.
And a graduate of Wareham High School.
And a graduate of Wareham.
Hooray.
Yep.
I wanted to take time to thank everybody on these committees from last year. Each year, this is my third year coming to the committees and presenting my budget, is always that hope that things will be okay, that we'll get what we need to survive and to thrive. And last year was an important year for us, and I know everybody on both committees worked so very hard, and administration did too, to try to procure everything that the schools needed. It didn't turn out the way that we wanted to, but we're okay, and I just don't think that you got the thanks from us, so thank you for that.
Christine's accounts are on page 2 of 18. And it goes through page 4 of 18. And her budget request is for $4,372,358. And she will go through her presentation. Christine.
Before I do begin, and it's kind of out of the code, but I thought that you should hear a little bit of how I developed the budget and the help that I got in developing the budget. These are the statements that I had. You don't have the full report, so I just want to read something to you. The fiscal year 2014 DECAS budget and financial plan is aligned and designed to meet the goals of the Wareham Public School District. It's important to keep in mind that that fiscal year 14 school budget reflects the financial condition of the town of Wareham and the lack of adequate educational funding of the initiatives and personnel that would enable the school district to fulfill the mission to effectively educate the children of Wareham for the future. While the fiscal year 2014 DECAS school budget proposes adequate funding for basic educational experiences for our students, it falls short of the student achievement targets that reflect the core learning values, goals, and aspirations of our students, staff, and administrators. So this budget was not made with the idea that we are going to get all of these things. It was made with the bare bones and the basic, even below basic, needs that our children in our facilities require in order to give the quality education and align that to the mission of the Wareham Public Schools. So my school looks like this. My flow chart has the principal, it has one assistant principal, and as Dr. Abinovich stated before, it used to have 2 years ago. The enrollments have not decreased that much. My first year here was 714. Last year hovered around 700, and this year I have approximately 675 students. During those years, my staff has been cut several times. Last year, I lost 2.5 teaching positions. I did regain some of the positions that I lost. My school was particularly impacted by what happened last year because my staff had the lowest of seniority. And when you reduce staffing, it goes by the union law, and union law states that the least seniority people go first. That happened to be at my school. So although I do have some staff that were put back into my school, it's not the highly trained, high-quality staff that were mixed into my school that you develop as a professional learning committee. Now, they were great people that I have, but they're not the highly trained DECAS people or the people that were used to the climate. And they're teaching out of grade. So I have a second grade teacher at grade 5. And those are your MCAS years. And most of the people that I lost last year were out of my MCAS years, grades 3, 4, and 5. So when you think about the training that goes in and the professional development investment that we make in our teaching staff, to be able to balance the budget by decreasing the staff just does not make sense because they go on to other districts very highly trained, and they thank us for that. So we have our custodian and secretarial staff as we would in any school, a bit smaller considering the size of the school, and we have one nurse. That nurse is shared with the West Wareham School. She goes back and forth.
and we have the same cafeteria staff. When we come down to the school psychologists and the guidance counselors, Deacon's does not have a team chair to facilitate the special education process inside the school. So those two staffing positions have to go half-time as team chair and half-time as a guidance counselor. Our school does not have a full-time guidance counselor for 670-something students. Bless you. Additionally to that, it's important to note that the clientele that we service at the Deacon's School has changed over the years. In the recent years that I've been there, the free and reduced lunch has gone from 42 to 57. So we're 57% this year at the Deacon's School. Wow. Comparable to other schools in the district and higher than other schools in the district.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
What is that again?
Approximately 57% of the students at the Deacon's School are on free and reduced lunch, with most of those students being on the free side of that category and not reduced.
Can I say one thing about that? One of the things that we saw was because of the issues over the last couple of years that there were working parents that one of them lost their job. Traditionally, the folks that you wouldn't expect to apply for free and reduced lunch were looking at any means necessary to be able to get additional fees into, their household. And so it was one of the reasons, I think, unless Dr. Bennett, you want to correct me, that we saw a significant increase in free and reduced lunch this year.
I mean, that is one of the reasons.
Yeah.
I need to put that number in context and relate it to what Dr. Rabinovich said earlier about the uniqueness of Wareham. And if you've heard it before, I apologize, but I think it's a critical piece of information. We have two sister towns, Middleborough and Carver. We get approximately low 40s, call it 42% of our budget is supported by Chapter 70. Middleborough and
Chapter 70 is?
State aid. State aid. Middleborough and Carver are both in the low 50s. So the 10% more of their budget. In other words, if we got what they got, it would be worth, call it $3 million a year to us, okay? So that's a curiosity, but it gets even more curious. They have half as many free and reduced lunch students. So we have wealth, but the kids that we're actually teaching are disadvantaged, and yet we're not being supported from a state aid perspective anywhere near the same degree as reflects our student population, because that's not the formula. That is literally a huge problem that the state has created by its formula for determining state aid. So over 50% for these two other communities, half the number of free and reduced lunch kids who obviously don't have the family support, financial well-being, et cetera, in order to provide that home support that is so critical, and they probably don't need adjustment counselors like we do. So that is a formulaic problem that we are stuck with, and I don't know the solution to that except maybe someone suing the state.
And for some more context, could someone just explain what is the threshold that qualifies you for free and reduced lunch?
Income.
Well, no, what the figure, like at what point do you qualify?
They have a shot. Go ahead.
It's based on a federal standard. The federal government assesses what the poverty level is on an annual basis, and that poverty level, of course, is directly correlated to the number of children in the household, and it is set by the federal government.
So, I don't know, like these days, is it around like $20,000 a year on a?
I think one of the things that I saw a family of four, it was like $30,000.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry.
No.
I actually know this answer.
Oh, good.
It's, for free lunch, it's a family of four is under $22,000. For reduced lunch, it's between $30,000, $22,000 and $30,000.
So, wow.
Think about that.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Sorry.
So that the changing demographics of Deacon's, as I'm assuming our whole town, anything above a 40% is not good in any school. It changes the entire learning
environment, and also it requires a lot more services. And those services that we look at is we look at ourselves now as becoming a community school, where parents are literally coming to us, asking us, how can I help my child? They need to help themselves. They can't afford the medical coverage. They can't afford vision coverage. We find ourselves advocating for children for vision and medical care. The dentist comes into our school, and I'm not sure if everybody knows about that, and we take over the nurse's office, and children are given dental care. We have a lot more to do in addition to providing a quality education for children in Wareham. And it's changing rather quickly. And as responsible adults and citizens, we need to address that change, because that's the right thing to do. It's not just enough to educate with math and writing and reading. We need to take care of these families and these children. A lot of our families are coming from New Bedford and Fall River. They're homeless. Many grandparents are raising children. And probably, I would venture to say, close to 1 out of 5 children are in need of psychological services in our school, because I'm also the district school for social emotional behavior program, require a lot of therapy. Therapy that if parents did have a car, they couldn't get them there, and that we're trying to provide that service inside schools. And that's just getting kids ready to learn.
At a recent school council meeting, I heard that 50%, over 50% of our middle school students are from single-parent households. And it could be a grandparent. I mean, it's a single adult household.
I read somewhere, and I don't know where, last year or the year before, that Wareham had the highest rate of single-parent households, school-age children.
I don't know what your data is for Deacon's, but
I have not calculated it, and there's a reason why I don't.
yep.
I can't.
Go ahead.
So when we look at our class sizes, as the kindergarten does have 6 instructors, and that is new this year, but that is supported by a grant. And so the class size has to be within a certain number. And we're also going through the NIAC accreditation process, which also requires us to have some mandates there in order for that grant to be able to be given to our district. Grade 1, we have 5 teachers, excuse me. Grade 2, we decreased. We have 5 teachers. Grade 3, we have 5. Grade 4, we decreased. We have 5. And grade 5, we have 5. And I was give up a half of intervention, a half of specialist position as well. So 2.5 positions never came back from last year. When I look at the support classrooms, I have a learning center for students in grades 2 to 5. And I also have the district social emotional day program. It looks like there's a lot of staff, but when you think about how many students per teacher or per adult, it's not a lot. And the special ed population inside my school is a bit over the state average. It's about 18%. But I think you have to look at the distribution of the special education population in my building. For example, last year in grade 3, we had approximately 30% of the students in grade 3 were special ed education students. And when you think of that in terms of adequate education and teachers and materials, is there enough? Overall, when you look at the school, it seems like it's only maybe a percentage point more than what the state average would be. But when you look at the individual grades and you realize that approximately 1 student out of every 3 pick up a pencil to answer that MCAS question is on a special ed plan, you know, that's something that we need to take a step back and look at. And Deacon's is not a school that gives out accommodations liberally. We have never been written up for that, and very few of our students have non-standard accommodations. The mission of our school
is we want a collaboration with parents and community members to provide a respectful, engaging, standards-based academic and social learning environment that is rigorous, differentiated, and ensures individual student success in the attainment of 21st century skills needed to positively impact our global society. It doesn't say that you have to go to Harvard. It doesn't say that you have to go to MIT. What our mission statement does say is that we want to give you the foundational skills and abilities to go any way you want in life. But wherever you go, you positively impact that area or that community that you're in. That's the goal of our school, that you be well-read, well-written, and that you can calculate. The formula for that, and it's debatable, but it's just my idea, is that you need proper staffing. And by proper staffing, you need consistent staffing. Consistent staffing that is highly qualified, highly trained, and can do their job. Teacher movement and mobility in a school will do as much damage to the MCAS scores as student mobility or not having adequate resources. The idea of balancing the budget through the manpower of the district cannot really be tolerated any longer, and especially at my school. We've hit that target enough. And to balance a budget through the town is much easier than it is for any school department, because in a school department, it's constantly dynamic. We are ruled and governed for different mandates. We have to do the teacher evaluation tool. That comes in. We didn't choose that. That is forced upon us. The Common Core, all good things, but they're forced upon us. No other department in the town of Wareham has that outside governance. We do. We are always going to be changing. We're always going to be having another issue, another problem, having to ride that wave. Because that's what school departments do. We ride the wave of whatever they throw at us. We'd love to be like the police department, and I don't mean any disrespect, that can sit down and literally say, we're going to need extra personnel. We need 5 years to get that. It's very, very different. We are not a department that stands still. We have buildings, we have many personnel, and we have outside agencies that govern us and pull us and twist us in many different directions, and we have no control over it. So to come each year before the committees and ask for a budget that is constantly changing, or it looks like we're having more, well, that's what you should expect, because that's what our outside governance people do to us. It's nothing we don't like. We wouldn't want that. We would love the stability of the fire department or the police department. But that's not the way it is for school districts. And that's not just this one. That's every school district in Massachusetts. So the proper staffing, effective staffing, is important for student success. And then, of course, our students. Looking not at the deficits, but at the positives. Deficit thinking will kill any school in any district. I'm not about that. We have what we have, and we do what we do because we love to do it and we're good at it. That's what we do. Our parents and community have been incredibly supportive. I know it doesn't look that way because of the vote, but we do have supportive parents and community members that are in our schools that are helping us. And that all helps us to do that wonderful thing that we all want, which is that high quality education. But the basic resources need to be there. And by the basic resources, I'm talking about the mandates that are outside that govern us, that we have to comply to. And you can't comply to that without the proper funding. And you can't balance a budget on the backs of children. My accounts for next year, principal supplies are going up because technology goes up. As we use more technology and we use more ink and we have different machines and different software programs, the costs go up. The ink costs are unbelievable, and you're going to see that in another area of the budget as well. The principal other expenses have also gone up. I have a new assistant principal, and in her old job she had certain benefits that were given to her, bless you, that, bless you, they have to be repeated through my school as well. So that would be the reason. That's really for the assistant principal. The textbooks are there, again, when you have implementation of Common Core in every single subject area. And you have, I believe it's going to be science, Ms. Rotella can help me with this, science testing.
It's already done.
It's already done, and it's going to be counted as part of our accountability
It
factor.
was counted last year, which
So
was the overall.
it's not like we can say, oh, we can just focus on, you know, the math and the ELA. Every subject is important. Every subject is accountable. And that's how we're looking at our teachers when we go to evaluate them. So there becomes that little balance of, well, if you don't give me the things that I need in order for me to do my job, then how can you judge me on how I'm doing that job? And kind of it's like the same thing with the principal. All of us are here. None of us work 35 or 36 hours a week. All of us work 60 hours a week, much to the dismay of our families. And I know that we are paid a good wage, as we should be, all teachers in all districts and all principals in all districts. Wareham isn't the district that pays the most or has the most benefits. We're all here for different reasons why we're here in Wareham. But one of the things that we should be aware of is when we decrease the budget and we offer our children less and less opportunity when compared to their peers that live in towns beside us or the towns that we're compared to using the Massachusetts DART, Taunton, and a few other school districts that now our schools are being compared to, you're going to see students and parents that feel like we're not providing what we should be providing leave the district. But worse than that is that you're also going to see a change in your teaching staff. Your teaching staff will leave because they will not feel as though it is in their power to change what's going on. This is a huge wave, and this is a huge turnaround. And I think Mr. Sweat is correct when he says, and Dr. Sylvia, we need to change this now. You just invested thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars in highly qualified, highly educated teachers. They do not need to work for this district, especially if they're constantly putting the sand up against that tide and the water just comes rushing through again. They need basic tools. They need class sizes that are manageable. They need the support for the students, emotional support, so students are ready to learn in order for them to do their job properly. And if we don't help them do that, then we're going to have a lot more loss, not only of our families that care very much, but also of the teachers that care very much for our children and love to teach our children, but they can't do it with the magic wand. The other area that we have an increase, a decrease actually, is in the instructional other. Again, I took out things that I really felt we couldn't live without. But there are some basic things that you need, such as handwriting books and things like that, and the list is small, but it costs money. It costs money for handwriting books. And we thought, well, maybe we can make copies. You possibly could make copies, but at the younger grades, some of those copies are in color to differentiate. Students wouldn't be able to see that, and the color copy is too expensive. And when you think about the paper and the time involved, it doesn't make sense. Again, this is for 700 students, and as Dr. Rabinovich pointed out, the Minot School and the Deacon School are the largest school in the district. We have the most students, and we probably have, I don't know this, probably have the least amount of staff supporting those students. The pencils and paper went up, again, because kids aren't coming in with these pencil cases of crayons and pencils. They don't have it. And I do get donations, and we buy pencils that, staff will buy pencils that were marked wrong, that printers had, and we try to pinch pennies as much as we can, but the bottom line is it costs more because our families can't pay more. In the computer supplies, as we get Makepeace grants, and we've gotten 2, we've been very fortunate to get 2 in these past 2 years, it costs money to support the technology that we've received through those grants. Custodial supplies, cut that down a bit, and then the building maintenance was also cut. These are the differences, I believe, in our items. This is a bigger version of what we're doing differently. And most everything is the same. The equipment repairs did go up because I have a laminator that has not been fixed. Laminator is for elementary school, is like, those are the tools that a teacher needs. I have these small laminators that we won, but the big laminators that we really utilize, we can't use because it's broken, and the estimated cost to fix it is going to be about $1,200, and it's not something that we can afford. So that sits there. So I did increase that to hopefully get that repaired for next year. There are other repairs that go on. It's an older school. It's not a new school, and certain things go. Last spring, I believe, one of our custodians was cleaning in one of the toilets, and she's a very good cleaner, and she was going underneath the toilet, and there was a little lug nut, evidently, that must have rusted. Well, when that lug nut broke, I had this huge geyser of a fountain coming out of one of those toilets, and it was at first it was like, oh my gosh, what do you do to this, and we all got wet. We finally found the turn-off knob, where it was, but that's just a sign of what we could expect. Now, that gave us a lead after about 3 inches of water and cleaning it up and all of us being sopping wet, that we need to repair every single one of those, because you're not going to wait for that to happen again to say that you need that repair. Also, the lighting, when you think about how much it costs to repair the lighting, ballasts are constantly burning out. When do we ever have the money to say, okay, just replace all the lighting to modern age lighting, and then we won't have to replace the ballasts? But we can't do that because we don't have the funding to do that. So we have to keep replacing ballasts. The copier and the leases, that's kind of what I consider a fixed cost. It goes up because it goes up. Every business, every organization has to have a copier. The network server, and we're doing some improvements there, and they're great improvements, but here again, you pay for these improvements. The fact that I have to wait 5 minutes for my computer to go on in the morning, which is why I like to check all my email at home, because I get to do it so much quicker. As a principal, I really can't sit there and wait 5 minutes. I can't wait 5 minutes for anything, let's be honest, but I can't wait 5 minutes for that computer to go on. And then it's one password, and then it's another password. So I'm 10 minutes into it, and my time is too valuable, and I can be doing other things. But that's what we have. That's the type of service that we have right now. So hopefully that's all going to change. And then the computer maintenance is a new, to support that new infrastructure that we're trying to build. The textbook increases, again, that is for the Common Core. Not a choice. Mr. Teller didn't ask for this. We didn't ask for this. This is an outside directive from the state, and there's no way around it. There's no halfways, and it's very different. And just to give you an idea, it's about approximately 1.5 years to almost 2 years above the grade level of where children were before. For example, in grade 3, you're probably using grade 4, maybe 4.5 materials. Everybody's being bumped up. So you say, well, why can't we just slide everybody back down? No, it doesn't work that way. Because not only did they increase the rigor in the performance expectations, they changed the actual content. So everything's of more informational text, less fiction. You're comparing 2 different types of reading materials. So it's not enough just to have 1 reading book. You're going to have 2 reading books. And you're going to have to compare 2 different things and write about that and be able to have a persuasive essay about that. So students need a lot more materials in order to be able to complete these tasks, and our teachers are able to instruct. You can't just have 1 book in front of you anymore. And that doesn't even count the core series.
I think you've already kind of covered these when you did the previous
other parts,
slides.
yep.
So if you go to the next one, which is... I think-
Staffing?
Yes.
Okay. The same thing as with the Minot School, and you heard the justification for the math interventionists. When I came to Wareham a few years ago, one of the things that I really wanted to do was the RTI initiative. And that has really come to fruition, and it's great. And we have it in ELA. We need it in math. We need it in every subject area, but we roll it out piece by piece. In order for that to be successful, we need 2 part-time interventionists, people that can provide intervention along with the classroom teachers, along with the staffing that we have. Because what happens, it's not like you have this separate, why can't the reading interventionist do the math job? Because you have so many classes inside one school, you have a crossover, and it stands to reason that you're going to have 2 different grade levels doing intervention at the same time.
These are all the things you did not get.
Did not get.
Thank you.
And the things that I need for the school. The math consultant that was explained by Ms. Siemens, as well as the technology teacher. Again, when you're talking approximately 120 IEPs, not 504s, but just the IEPs, and there's 180 days in the school year, and that's just if there's just 1 meeting per year.
Excuse me, Christine, this is a acronym-free zone.
I'm sorry.
IEP?
Okay. The individual education plans for special ed students,
Thank you.
that's that 18% that I talked about.
And you
Well,
have to have an annual
You must have at least 1 annual review, and then we have we have 2 programs at my school that require many more than just 1 meeting per year, and we have many students that require more than 1 meeting. So you have 120 individual education plans mandated by the state and federal government. Once a year you have to meet, so that's 1 meeting almost per day, if you really want to talk about it. Most of the time, we have 2 meetings per day. So, who covers for those meetings? Because teacher participation is mandatory. And that would be special education teacher and regular education. Here again, this is not something that we choose to do, but outside mandates force us to do. So the tech assistant would be doing other things inside our building. And now if you add the 504 meetings in there, although we do, not every child that has a documented disability has a 504, only those that require a 504 or need an accommodation to access their learning and materials or the social aspect of the schools. And then that person would be able to do higher technology troubleshooting, because I didn't have any internet this morning when I went to check my email. I do need a team chair, because again, I do have a lot of IEPs, and I really do believe that the students of DECUS need a full-time guidance counselor to be able to tend to their needs, to get them ready to learn. A school adjustment counselor is also in need. It is not just the students of DECUS that need help. It's our whole families. To think that we can just help the children and then send those children home, not have anything followed up. It's just as much participation that you need in that social emotional growth than you do in academics. And you cannot deny that. You can't hide that. You can't put that underneath the rug. Our community of children has higher needs. And we must address those needs. There's no way around it. It's unethical not to. So the adjustment counselor is needed. And then the aides of Mr. Luzon, and I disagree with this, but we respectfully disagree with this. And I understand his position. He's the bean counter. I get that. But I'm a person in that school every day and night.
Could you define LLEAP?
That is the, I don't know what we did when we made that acronym, because I can't even remember it from this summer, but I can give you the basics of it. It is the very comparable to the program that is at the West School. Students that require a lot more intense social, emotional supports and therapeutic supports in order to be able to learn. That program exists inclusive in my school and is doing quite well. Very proud of it.
So this was not a new program, it was a redesign of an existing program for kids with social and emotional disorders. So both of those programs are now at the Deacon's School, where that was actually split in the past. And we, as we do at West Wareham Academy, we have the Walker Foundation come in, provide the social work and the therapeutic intervention services through Walker. So it's really a partnership program between Wareham Schools and the Walker Foundation.
So right now, each one of those programs has one teacher and one aide, and then two Walker consultants go back and forth between the two classrooms. And my proposal is that we have two aides, like we used to have, and one teacher in the event that perhaps children require a bit more of a physical intervention. So the overcrowding at Deacon's, it's kind of something that we get used to, and it's an uncomfortable thing to even say that, because we shouldn't be complacent. When I look down the hallway, and I do think it's normal now to see a learning environment in the bus lobby. I don't see that as appalling, but I guess it is. That's the way some of our children have to learn. There are two actually stations there, and to us it looks like there's plenty of room, but it is in a lobby and it is out in the open, and it's not the best. But we've been doing that for many years. This one room houses 4 teachers, 2 interventionists that provide the higher level of intervention, and 2 special education teachers of pull-out groups. So each one of the quadrants of this room would have a table with some chairs, approximately 6 chairs. We try to keep those groups smaller. And they would all learn. And amazingly enough, the teachers are very respectful of one another. You don't hear too much of a distraction of what's going on. But 4 classrooms of learning would be going on in this one area at once at Deacon's. That does not include the gymnasium, the second gymnasium, the smaller one that's being used. This is the art teacher's corner, cubby. That is a storage closet for textbooks, and she has a little bit of an area in the hallway that she uses for her planning time and her desk time. She's on a cart. She has to go from classroom to classroom.
So that's a hallway.
That's a hallway. That's a hallway. And that's a sink. It's actually a custodial sink, but we kind of commandeered it for her, for our art supplies. Again, to us, it looks like functional space, but it's not. It's dysfunctional. Our teachers should not be in the hallway planning using a custodial sink. They should have an area that's respectful of the craft and the service that they provide to our children. This is, I don't even know what this room is.
I'm sorry. When I first saw this picture, it's like an interrogation room.
I kind of think it is. No, I really don't know what this room is. It is off of the cafeteria, between the gym and the cafeteria. There's a big ventilator. That's an electrical station there that's locked. But this is, again, another learning area that we take children to. And we thought we hit gold when we found this and converted it, because it had 2 exits. It was great. It was perfect. Again, in our estimation, it worked. It was something that we needed. So, and that's the other school.
Are there any questions for Mrs. Panarisi from her overall budget papers before she moves on? And I think at that point, we'll give you an opportunity to grab some food and to sit down, and while we then bring our next principal from the East Wareham School here.
On page 27, there's the slide, and it has justifications for increasing in staffing, and then parentheses, not included in totals. Jeff asked, that didn't make it. This whole slide didn't make it. In parallel, on page 18, mine had a similar slide, and it looks like a teacher made it.
A single teacher, that is
A
correct.
full-time teacher.
Yes.
That's not an interventionist?
No.
All right.
It was a class size issue.
Right now, my class sizes are stabilized, and again, when I say the number, you're going to be appalled, but it seems okay. They're about 23, 24, with the exception of grade 5, which is up to 26. And I would really look at the idea that the Deacon's School is a large school. Any large elementary schools are never a good idea. They're hard to turn around. They're hard to change. The idea that the 5th grade could possibly come over to the middle school would actually benefit the Deacon's School quite a bit, because then you can concentrate on grades K to 4. It would be smaller, more manageable. You'll have more space. We won't have the crowding that we have, but also just the research shows that it's just easier to turn a school around. And that's really what we're talking about here in Wareham, is turning the culture around. The culture inside the school as well as outside the school. And it's up to us to convince the community about that without raising taxes. I mean, that's easy enough for me to sit here and say that, but you have to turn around and you have to say, you can balance the budget. Anybody can do that. That's, we all try to do that. We do it with our own income. We do that. But to balance it and provide services that you're supposed to provide, that the children deserve, that they expect us to advocate for them because they cannot advocate for themselves. That's skill. And each year we come here, and each year we're asked to do the same thing. I just don't want to come here another year and tell you that we've lost more staff and we've lost more students, because we could our community could very easily turn into what is looked at as an inner city community. Very easily.
Yeah, just curious too. And no one else has this, but this is the one that you had posted up there. The interventionists, you have 3 here. Are they all full time?
No, part-time.
They're all
I have,
part-time.
what I opted to do at the Deacon's School is to take, rather than lose one more staff member, because losing a staff member is horrific. I opted to take 2 part-time interventionist positions and make them a full-time. I was allowed to do that, 1 full-time. So my interventionists may look a little bit different than mine. It's because I took 2 spots and made it a 1.
So, like, what else are these interventionists doing the other half of the time?
They're only half-time.
Oh,
They only come in.
They only work half day.
They only work
Just
half
literally
day.
half-time.
That's
Okay.
it.
Ooh, okay.
No benefits.
Oof. Oh, all right.
And we're very fortunate to have these people.
Yeah.
They're quite talented.
Yeah, all right, thank you.
There's 2 things that concern me, and I'd just like to get maybe a feel for you in terms of the budget allocations. We all know that there is a direct correlation between socioeconomics and academic achievement. And where you have got, you've got a lot of students on the lower end of the socioeconomic scale. The offset to that, or the adaptation for that, is additional services, and additional services take money. In your opinion, are we doing an adequate job in terms of providing those additional services to compensate for the fact that there is such a large disparity between socioeconomics and academic achievement?
I think the way that I have seen in my 3 years of being here in the district, the way I have seen my free and reduced numbers go up incredibly quickly at great percentages is practically unheard of. People start to shake when it's 10 percentage points more than what it used to be. When I look at the Deacon's School, it probably has gone up 25 percentage points.
So there should
We
be a
haven't kept up.
but there should be a correlation between our budget and how we service those kids, because
Absolutely.
that's the offset.
Well, that's the new eyes.
Is that happening?
No, Dr. Sylvia, and I don't think that we have had time to really take a look at that and see the services that are necessary. As Dr. Abinovich pointed out, the factor that people economically, have lost their jobs isn't the only factor that's made for that increase in percentage of free and reduced lunch. There are other factors there, and we really would have to do a good sizable district
Now,
study.
I know that a lot of the kids in that group, in that subgroup, are coming with special education plans and services, and I'm not that concerned about the students on the NED plan, because the students on the NED plan in Massachusetts get maximum benefit as opposed to the national standard of free and appropriate. So I'm not too concerned, because technically or theoretically, we're supposed to be giving our special education students all they need to succeed.
By law,
By law. Well, by law, we're supposed to be doing that.
Right.
But my problem with it is all the other kids that fall in the crack, so to speak, in terms of the socioeconomic correlation. So I have a problem, because the one offset to that is money.
Right.
No matter how you slice the cake, the big offset to that is money. The other question I have for you is, do you feel that you have the capacity right now to institute and it was the same question I asked the minor principal, the new evaluation system?
Well, that's a good question. When you asked that before, I thought about how I would answer that, and I'm thinking back to my own goals that I
So
put.
you knew I was going to ask you too.
I did, and I prepared. But again, I'm probably going to have the same answer as Joan did. I put on my goal that I would have an average of 8 write-ups per week. But I need to redo that, Dr. R, because I didn't remember the Monday holidays or the holiday weeks. So I'm running around like a wild woman, and it happens to be an area in a field that I'm really good at and I've studied quite intensely on. I don't feel as I'm giving back the appropriate feedback that I would like to give back. And so if I could see any improvement in that, I wouldn't want to just hand the teacher a piece of paper and then if they have any issues, they can come and talk to me. I would rather meet with that teacher. But where do you get that time? You can't ask them to meet on planning.
And I sense that might be a byproduct of the lack of capacity to do this.
And we have the whole school.
We're not going to be able to
I
provide them the
have
quality feedback
every
that they need.
staff member in the school.
The other concern I have is RTI. All right, we're talking about the interventionists, we're talking about RTI. We've committed, the school committee and the administration and principals have committed to the fact that we know that this is a sound strategy for academic achievement, early intervention, but yet there requires interventionists.
Right.
It requires personnel to make this thing work.
Right.
All right. So my concern is, if we're going to stay with RTI, are we going to reach a point where it's not going to be reaping any benefits at all because we don't have the proper amount of interventionists?
Well,
in your school particularly.
Yeah. Okay. Let's look at that 2 different ways. Since when I came to DECUS, I think the special education percentage, and I'm going to try to pick my brain for this. I think it was 19 and 19.5%. Right now it's at 18, so we're showing a decrease in that. Okay. We are getting kids off of plans, which means what we're doing is working. Anytime that you can catch a child
Absolutely.
before it gets to the point of a learning disability is a gold star for us. And so as a district, when you made the commitment to support that program and to provide that service for every single student, it was remarkable that you did that. It
Okay.
really was.
So in
because
your
it helped
opinion,
all
you still have
children.
the capacity to maintain
Right
it?
now, I have the capacity to do that
That's
in
all I
ELA.
need to know.
Dr. Sylvia, could I just, for folks who may not know,
Sure.
I don't think we've talked about it, RTI
Well, I'm sure you're
is-
going to talk about it when you do your thing too, but go ahead.
just because we've talked about it with each person, RTI is actually an acronym for response to intervention. It's a framework of instruction whereby.
I think it's so important that when you get up, you probably ought to talk about it.
Well, I thought people might be wondering what this conversation is about, and I just wanted to
Okay.
let people know what the acronym. Ron had mentioned it earlier.
That's it. Other things I could talk about, like changing the lighting. Katie talked about that at the meeting. We should change the lighting, district-wide. We'll save thousands and thousands of dollars if we change the lighting. So,
Derek,
thank you.
Did you have a question, Derek?
It was more, it's understanding that I'm a guest here. It was more just sort of a thought.
A welcome guest.
Thank you. I applaud the passion on there, but I believe part of the message is flawed. The straw man fallacy is not going to solve any of our budget problems. If we're doing this, we're all going to lose. We cannot fight one another and hope to solve this budget.
That's right.
So that's where probably the biggest failure is that we have not all come together in the past few years. And I think part of that's being remedied even right here, right now. I would say if on January 17th, 8:30 a.m., they were going to start our budget hearings, that's the police there. They do have minimum staffing requirements for shifts. And as of the 5 new employees they had, at the end of this budget cycle, they'll have 1.5 left out of them. So none of us are not feeling the pain. And if we're not working on this collaboratively, then it's the end. We might as well just give up. So that's why I'm here today, is to work with everyone. And for the people watching at home, if they hear us throwing rocks at one another, I feel that's not going to help.
I wanna just respond to that. I don't think it's a matter of throwing rocks. I think what you have here is a sense of frustration from everybody. And being new, I think that you can certainly understand this. We have been through this process many times, and many times we have asked for help, and we have pleaded our cases, and we have taken the hit, politically in papers and blogs and everything else like that. And that's fine, because if it means at the end of the day that kids are taken care of, then I think we're all agreeing with that. What I think we need to do, and I do agree with you, is to work together. But I think our project is a little bit bigger. I think we need to work together to change the culture of the town so that we put education first. And you can't do it alone, obviously, but when the leaders of this town put their heads together and say, we're going to put education first. You're not going to get everything, but we are going to make sure that every citizen in Wareham understands that education is a priority for us. That's about all you can do, and that would be grateful. We'd be very grateful for that. So if we can work together on agreeing to that, then I think we have great room to grow, because we're always growing. We're not going to fix this overnight. We can get into it overnight. But we need to all put that priority in one spot, and I am on board with you for that.
Thank you.
Somebody?
I had a general question. This might not be the right time to ask it, but we talked about social services, if you will, which term you used. Have you got any idea, if you look at, and I'm looking for an estimate, not an exact figure, but if you're looking at a total budget of 28 million, any idea how much of that goes to that type of thing rather than to what most of us would think of as the normal educational costs?
Special ed.
I think if you were to categorize it as non-classroom supports, so this the classroom versus the non-classroom. So those specialized services really fall under student services that I'll be talking about this afternoon, and I'll have some figures both in terms of the grants and the other costs.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just segue. Very last line of your budget, $65,000 for social worker contracted service. It's a brand new amount.
That, the Walker Foundation that we talked about?
Yes.
This year, we were able to scrap together from various grants to pay for that service.
So it's grant
To
funded.
continue it, it needed to go into
For
the
that program, Mr. Sweat.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
For that program.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mrs. Panarisi.